Right, good afternoon everyone and welcome to the Council meeting on October the 6th, 2025. Let's get started. So first of all, do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've received apologies from Councillors Jupp and Morris, and I know Councillors Latif and Yateman will be late.
Thank you very much, and I believe Councillor Qureshi is going to be 20 minutes late as well, possibly. Thank you. Do I have any declarations of interest? Councillor Malik.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Item 10, where the taxis are mentioned, I am a badge holder, so if there's any talk going to happen, I'll take a legal advice if they want me to leave the chamber.
Noted, thank you. Okay, any other declarations of interest? Yes, Councillor Smoten.
Not a declaration of interest, but an apology. Ros Smith will be arriving a bit late.
Thank you very much. Okay, then we will move on to the minutes of our last meeting. So can we agree that the minutes of the meeting from the 14th of July 2025 are a correct record? Are we all happy to agree that?
Aye.
Cute. Nobody objecting? No. Great. Thank you very much. On to item 4. Appointments to committees. I believe we have none. No new appointments to committees. So we'll move straight on to item 5, announcements. First, just very prosaically, in terms of the break, which we used to have before we would have it so that we could have the public addresses at 7 o'clock. We changed our constitution so we no longer are tied to that timing. So depending on how quickly we get through things, we may have that public address before the break and then go for a break afterwards, but we'll see how we get on. Right. So then I would just like to say, I think being Lord Mayor continues to be eye-opening and fascinating. I've been invited to various cultural festivals from a number of communities, the Polish community, the deaf community, the Nepalese community. We had Older People's Day. I've also had a lot of interaction with our different twinning groups, and I do think it is really important that we continue to be outward-looking and welcoming at this time. I went to a sung Nicaraguan peasants' mass recently from our Leon friendship group. I've hosted some young musicians from Leiden who were over here for a concert. And I believe we do have 2 visitors from Bonn in the public gallery. Hello, Christoph and Kirsten. Thank you for visiting us. Very good to see you. I also greeted a school group from Wroclaw who gave me a copy of this absolutely charming book that they've written in conjunction with some Polish children who are here living in Oxford. Possibly most inspiring was chatting to some young medical students from Palestine, which was organised by our Ramallah Oxford Friendship Organisation. And talking to them really made me feel there is hope for the future. Very resilient young people. I've also really enjoyed meeting some of the young people from Oxford in the combined cadet force who were either looking very smart at the Battle of Britain services or in their newly reopened building on Sandy Lane. I met them all learning lots of things like how to do CPR and navigate in a forest, various things. There have been some really fun bits like opening St Giles Fair, where I'm very pleased to report I won some prizes. Though, to be honest, I think they mainly gave them to me out of sympathy rather than as a recognition of my skill. There's a couple more larger ones in the Lord Mayor's parlour that I will, I think, probably be auctioning off at the Lord Mayor's quiz. Other fun things was attending the first ever park play event in Blackbird Leys Park on Saturday. So it's like Park Run, but you turn up and play games. So I ran round with a lot of volunteers from Oxford Community Action and some very cheerful families with children. Every Saturday, 10 a.m, come on down. Okay? But of course, I think the main part of the Lord Mayor's job is to thank people. And those maybe are healthcare workers in the diversity volleyball tournament I attended, or the Lees Community Development Initiative, who've done 30 years of bringing young and old people together. They had a great celebration and party. It might be thanking the adult volunteers who run our cadet groups, or the many people involved in getting the Lees Youth Hub open recently, which is another fabulous event. So there are an awful lot of wonderful people doing some great things in the city, and it's been a real treat to see some of those. Finally, just to say, on Thursday night, I am spending the night with Sasha from the Gatehouse, sleeping outdoors in university parks to raise money for the Oxford homeless movement. So if anybody would like to sponsor us, I would be delighted. Right, so that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over and see if there's anything from the Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just briefly, it was a pleasure to welcome the new Vicar of Holy Trinity, Headington Quarry, Choes and Roses Ward, on behalf of the City Council and the people of the city. I also, not officially, but I was very happy to attend a demonstration of solidarity with the community that attends Oxford Central Mosque after that was vandalised. In the light, particularly of the events of the last week, it is important to make clear as civic office holders that we stand with all the communities of our city, particularly those gathering in community places and places of worship which at times become the target for extremists and racists, and we must stand with all our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Sheriff.
I'm afraid my life is much less fun than yours, Lord Mayor. Nothing from me, no.
Sorry to hear that. Thank you. Okay, then I'm handing over to the Leader of the Council.
Sorry, I just realised I was trying to press the wrong button. So I have an announcement and a statement I'd like to make to Council. So I will do the announcement first. So the announcement is that we have a new champion. I'm very pleased to appoint Councillor James Taylor to be our new champion for events, live music and the nighttime economy. And I'm sure he'll do that role excellently. And we'll be working with the Cabinet member for, Councillor Hollingsworth, who will be the relevant Cabinet member for those responsibilities. But I didn't want to let today go by without making a statement on behalf of the Council on the very serious issues that we've all been facing over the last few weeks and indeed years. So, as I'm sure Council is aware, tomorrow marks the 2-year anniversary of the terrible attacks in Israel and the taking of hostages, some of whom are still not returned to their homes and families. And it also marks the escalation of nearly 2 years of horrific loss of life in Gaza and in the West Bank. On Thursday last week, we saw the horrible attacks on the Jewish community in Manchester on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. And yesterday there was an arson attack on a mosque in Peacehaven, which thankfully did not result in any loss of life. Last night, I had the privilege of being at Oxford Synagogue, where people of all faiths and none joined the Jewish community as we all mourned the attacks 2 years ago, but also the terrible destruction and loss of life in Gaza, and hoped and prayed for peace. We're fortunate in Oxford to have several decades of different faith communities working together to find the many things that bind us together. But at a time when anti-Semitism, Islamophobia and racism are all on the rise, we must all double down in our efforts to listen to each other and to encourage our communities to come together. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Then just checking, do the Chief Executive have anything to add? No. Chief Finance Officer? Nothing. Monitoring Officer? Nothing to add. Excellent, thank you. In that case, then I'd like to invite our City Rector to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Lord Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Lovely to be here. My apologies, I've got to go quite quickly. I, as many of you are, am a governor of a school, and the inspectors phoned today, and things must be done tonight. So thank you for your patience with that, but it's lovely to be with you for a few minutes. If I can go off script very briefly, it was the Deputy Lord Mayor who welcomed me when I became a vicar in Oxford 6.5 years ago, and following your words, and also Councillor Brown's words, the faith communities, all the faith communities, really appreciate the City Council's interest in what goes on and your presence. Thank you hugely for that. Following on, if I may, from Councillor Brown's very wise words, just conscious that today is the anniversary of the martyrdom of William Tyndale, who studied in this city in 1536, and a reminder that atrocities happened then as now. A few years ago, after one atrocity, a school teacher wrote these words, and I often come back to these, so I just wonder if I may read them tonight. It's very short. There comes a time when we must stand for kindness, not fear, for trust, not resentment, for justice, not cruelty, for reconciliation, not revenge. There comes a time when we must stand for the humanity in each and every one of us. Will you stand with me today and keep the light alive in our schools, our communities, our society at large? Will we stand strong together today? Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Right, moving on then to item 6 on public addresses relating to matters for decision at this meeting. We have none. So we will move straight on to item 7. Appropriation of land at Elsfield Hall from the General Fund to the Housing Revenue account. And I believe Councillor Linda Smith is going to introduce this.
Thank you. Last month's Cabinet agreed to give project approval and delegations and budgets for 4 new housing development schemes, which altogether we hope will provide approximately 100 extra affordable homes for the city. They were sites at Elsfield Hall, at Cave Street, a disused garage site in Barton, Underhill Circus, and Knights Court, an office block on Between Towns Road. 2 of those sites require further approvals from Council this evening. So it's the Elsfield Hall site, which we've got on the agenda first here, item 7, and also the next item, the Cave Street site, which require the Council to agree appropriation of the sites from the General Fund to the Housing Revenue account. So it's just a sort of technical move of how the Council owns those sites that we need to do in order to bring them forward for housing development. On the Elsfield Hall site, we hope that will provide at least 30 new affordable homes. I personally hope it will be many more than that, but that does require on our colleagues who make up the local planning authority here at the council. So the plan is for it to be 100% affordable, a mix of social rent and shared ownership. And you can look just next door to the site to see what we hope to achieve and what the potential is. It's just next door to Cannon's Court, which I had the pleasure of, Councillor Hollingsworth and I had the pleasure of cutting the ribbon on that a couple of years ago now. There's now people living very happily in there in shared ownership homes and homes they rent from the council, enjoying the security that those homes bring. So I move this report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Would you like to second it?
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Just very briefly, my name's on this and on the subsequent report as well because of the property angle. Really happy to do this. I think this is excellent as a potential use of these sites. In both of them, we have explored other more commercial units. I know many around this chamber sort of think we actually need to challenge ourselves as well about making sure we do find the sites for housing, and of course that's right, but also for the council as the landowner here, the commercial uses don't really fly, so this is a really good use for these sites and will provide the much needed affordable housing that Linda's talked about, so I'm very glad to second these.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turner. So now I'm going to ask if anybody would like to comment on these, and please let me know if it's going to be something commercially confidential and if we would need to go into confidential session. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't think we'll need to go into confidential session for my point. I'm very encouraged to hear Councillor Smith's hopes for Elsfield Hall, in particular that she mentioned many more houses or many more units of accommodation, should I say. And I would encourage her and the Cabinet to look at increasing the density here if that's at all possible. But I'm very encouraged to see this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Malik.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. No, I welcome all this development, and I think it's very much housing we lack in the city is required. Apart from comment, my question is on the Knights Road. What's the council plan? Are they going to demolish and rebuild it, or are they going to convert the existing building into housing?
Thank you. Councillor Smith, would you like to reply?
Yes, very happy to take on board Councillor Fairweather's encouragement about the density. That will certainly be an argument myself and other people will be making, and we hope that colleagues in the planning department listen to us. Knights Court, so this report isn't about Knights Court at all, but if you go back and look at the Cabinet papers from last month, the current proposal isn't to demolish it, it's to convert it.
Councillor Ross-Smith.
Sorry, I do apologise, and I do apologise for being late this evening. Couldn't be helped. And I'm sorry to come in at the last minute on this one. Can I just be clear? Is this the building in Cave Street that was going to be, or had been used partly before as small business units and start-ups? Or have I got the wrong location? I'd be happy to be corrected.
Yes, we haven't got on to Cave Street, yes, but I did mention it in passing. But yes, I did mention it. Yes, it's what was previously Standingford House down the bottom of Cave Street, a site owned by the council.
Lord Mayor, would you indulge me to speak again? Sorry, now I've got that clear. Would you like me to speak later when you're discussing Cave Street, or now?
Let's leave it, because we're going to do the Elsfield Hall first, okay, and then come back to Cave Street. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments on the Elsfield Hall site? No? Great. Then in that case, I would like to put this to the vote. So can I see all those in favour of this appropriation? Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? No. Okay. Right. I think that is carried. Good. Thank you. So then moving on to item 8, which is the appropriation of land at Cave Street from the General Fund to the Housing Revenue Account. You've already spoken about it. Anything else to add specific to Cave Street, Councillor Smith?
Just to say that we hope this site will create at least 19 new affordable homes. We think it's a good site to prioritise for one-bedroom units, which is what we're desperately in need of as a council at the moment. If we agree this tonight, we really hope that we might be able to really get cracking on it and hopefully even complete the development by the end of next year.
Thank you. Right, inviting comments. I know we have one coming.
Thank you. I hope I really have got the right building and the right thing. We had some discussions in previous council meetings about the use of this particular building for start-up and things, and I think there was some consideration given to increasing the rents and things, possibly. I'm not sure if I am talking about the same building. Please interrupt me if I'm not.
I think we'll go to, and I'm sorry, I missed asking Councillor Turner if you'd like to second this at the start as well. So if you'd like to do that now.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to second it, and maybe I can say a couple of words about the previous plans here. So the building's gone, I'm afraid. It's all gone, it's all demolished. And we're left with a site. We had, as I mentioned in seconding the previous report, looked at and in fact worked up what was a really good scheme for some startup units. But I think that the scheme didn't stack up financially, and in particular in the world where costs in building had risen substantially, we could just about previously, on a good day with some subsidy from outside the council, by the grit of our teeth, have made the scheme stack up. And then the costs went up and it just didn't work anymore. And so, unfortunately, we couldn't pursue that option. And instead, we're going with something which is a close second best, or maybe even best, actually, which is the affordable housing scheme. I hope that clears it up.
If I could just finish it, I'm absolutely delighted. Because this is something that we suggested instead, actually, for that building, whether that could, in fact, actually be housing or homes, you know, whether it's 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or anything, but actually homes right in the city centre, right where we have jobs, right at the bottom of Headington Hill, where we have Headington at the top with 5 or 6 hospitals crying out for staff living locally. So I am absolutely delighted and will be supporting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Good. In that case, unless there are any other comments, can I put this to the vote? Who is in favour of this appropriation of land at Cave Street? Thank you very much. I believe that is unanimous. Anyone against? Abstaining? No. Great. Okay. Thank you. Then that is carried. So we then move on to items 9 and 10 on the agenda, which now both of these reports have been withdrawn, and this is because we've come to realize that the governance pathway may not have been correct for these. So while we're getting the correct governance pathway determined, these are being withdrawn, and there will be a full briefing on it coming to all members in November. So I'm not particularly proposing to take any questions on that because there's nothing really to add at this stage. Okay? Thank you. If this is a very... You may or may not be able to answer this, but off you go, Councillor Mundy.
I think at the very least the chairs of those committees should have the right of response and question, seeing as there were reports that came from their committees.
I'm just going to hand over to the monitoring officer to see if she has a view on that. Thank you.
Hello, hopefully that's on. So in terms of the withdrawal, I mean, as they're no longer on the agenda, members wouldn't be able to ask questions on the Pacifics because they're no longer on there. So that wouldn't be proper at all. So we can't do that. In terms of the process, as the Lord Mayor explained, what's happening is further advice has been sought and the decisions will return back to members, and we're just resolving the correct governance pathway. But what members will have is a full briefing explaining in full kind of what the legal issues were and what's going to happen. And also there will be, the chairs will be spoken to once that advice is all complete, and we're on it and we're sorting it. So so that is the position on that. I hope that's okay for now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rachel. Right, so without further ado then, we will move on to item 11, which is the Working Overseas Policy and Procedure, and I believe this is going to be introduced by Councillor Chapman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. This is a policy to fill a vacuum at the moment. We have not had a comprehensive policy about working abroad, either for staff or members. So we need that for a number of reasons. I mean, obviously, you know, we just don't want people wandering off working from abroad without talking to their line management about it, about making sure that they're going to work in a secure way, that ensures that we are conscious of cybersecurity and particularly data protection issues, which lie at the heart of this paper. So the policy is laid down here. We're trying to keep it as light touch as possible, both for staff and for members. And you'll no doubt have read the procedures that we are proposing to include in it and apply from now on, assuming the Council approves it today. In terms of members in particular, there are sort of a number of requirements. First of all, we will, if you want to go abroad, work from abroad, that's fine, but you need to do a risk assessment, a short risk assessment, which will be reviewed by senior members of the management, including Tom Hook, who's here in the chamber tonight. You need to take into account the fact that you're going to need council-provided equipment. But that's obviously logical because council-provided equipment has been vetted, viewed, and installed by council IT. They know what's in it, and they know how secure they can make it. Obviously, if you're using your own stuff, they've got no idea, really, frankly, how secure your equipment is. You hope it's secure, but you just don't know. And thirdly, there are a number of countries where there are significant intrinsic risks, both to visit and to work abroad. And if you look on the list, there are 14 countries here, of which, if I might be so bold to say, most of them will not pass the test of the Foreign Office advice to take your holidays there. They are countries that have, if I can put it this way, some history of trying to attack our IT systems in this country, and therefore I think it would not be particularly wise to go there in any instance, but if you do, you absolutely need to come forward and talk to our IT teams about it. To preempt a question I think I'm going to get, which is why is the USA on the list, because that seemed to be completely counterintuitive. The reason why it's on the list is because if you set a standard for data security, in particular GDPR, you're assessing that standard against the standards of other countries. And the truth is, in America, it's a very mixed story. Some states have reasonably strong data protection policies and some have very weak ones. So that is why USA is on the list. It's also why South Korea is on the list. I wouldn't put South Korea alongside some of the other countries, frankly, in terms of your own security and safety. Having said that, I can imagine situations in extremis where you're in America and something's going on in your portfolio and you desperately have to read something. I'm sure that officers, I've had this conversation, will interpret the policy in a pragmatic way if you're in that position. But the supposition with the states is no, but if you come forward and say, I absolutely need this for particular reasons, there's an emergency, then I'm sure officers will look at it in an enlightened way, balancing risk with that particular request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Do I have a seconder for the report? Thank you very much, Councillor McConway. So then, does any members of the council want to comment on this or ask a question? Councillor Smoten.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So first of all, this is clearly better than the status quo, which is that there's just a blanket ban on any foreign access. I have to say I would encourage taking another pass around subsequently for a few reasons. Firstly, that my personal experience sort of working in the relevant field with policies which are sort of quite high friction, especially where the typical use case is somebody wanting to do something quite simple, probably to reply to an email or something of that sort, rather than to work abroad long term or something like that, is that it does lead to quite a lot of benign circumvention. It's very easy to make your traffic appear to come from the UK, by tethering a UK mobile, by using any number of VPN services, and that seems quite likely to happen in practice. I'm not saying any particular individual would, of course, but only that's the kind of thing that happens. Secondly, that it's quite a thin defence, that the principle here is sort of blocking traffic that comes from abroad, but again, because it's so easy to VPN into a UK site, that does mean that any malicious actor who is even vaguely competent is going to be able to make themselves appear to come from the UK. So it isn't really clear what we're getting out of this in terms of benefit. There's a certain amount of, maybe more the appearance of security than actual security. I can quite appreciate, because there's been an attack which has come from an actor abroad, but I'd be really surprised if that actor didn't know how to just disguise their traffic. And then lastly, yeah, as you say, the list of countries, you say that officers will be pragmatic about it. What it says in the policy right now is that the US is an absolute no ifs, no buts, no, no, no. So it does appear as if we're saying that the US is strictly more of a data risk than the entirety of the rest of Central and South America, which does seem inconsistent. So I would urge us to take a look at that so that we can take sensible measures to work from countries like those, for example, by using an encrypted device or an encrypted connection.
Thank you very much. I wonder if the Deputy Chief Executive would like to comment.
Thank you. So I suppose in general terms, this is just one of many measures we're implementing around cyber security. So it's not a standalone measure that we're looking in and of itself to provide absolute security. We have, until this point, we had a inconsistent policy, and then obviously we implemented a straight ban. The advice we've taken, so the list of countries comes from national government in terms of where there are more risks, and part of the problem with the states is that each state potentially has different rules, and therefore against what are we judging things. I'm happy to commit in terms of if there are people looking to go to the States, we can take a pragmatic view as to that, as to why they need to go. And we have a risk assessment built in, attached to the policy, what will allow us to do that. Happy to review as we go and learn from what we're doing. I won't comment on some of the other weaknesses that Councillor Smoton's potentially highlighted in terms of how to circumvent this.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Turner.
Thanks. Since the Deputy Chief Executive's offered to do a bit of Q&A, I'll put my 2 bits in. I mean, one thing that caught my eye was that the member will accept liability for any costs incurred to the Information Commissioner should a data breach occur. It'd be interesting to know the order of magnitude of those costs. The potential order of magnitude, members, you know, will want to be concerned about that. I mean, pragmatically, a number of us, particularly with complicated lives, will have different devices for different bits of our lives. At one point, I think I could have had 4 different laptops to carry around, which is not, you know, I like to travel light. 4 laptops isn't helpful. I mean, realistically, I think committee services will need to think about relatively portable loan devices, otherwise this isn't going to work. And I think the other bit, which is a tricky one, is around contactability of members, and we're going to need to think about this, because we, for sensitive stuff, encourage people to use our council emails. That's right and proper. But of course, we don't want to encourage people to email into a void for several, you know, if a member's on holiday for a while. A number of us are quite cautious about out-of-office replies because it advertises that we're not at home to anyone that's in touch. And sometimes people historically have been a bit sensitive about that, about describing our movements. Sometimes people want to be in touch with a particular member and simply saying, contact my ward colleague on an out-of-office or contact somebody else isn't particularly brilliant. So I suppose what people will do is what they might do on a political leaflet at election time and give a personal email, but that does then mean that while the member's abroad, they'll be encouraging people to send potentially sensitive stuff to their personal email, which is worse. So when officers are thinking about the further iterations of this policy, I'm sure they'll give consideration to these practical considerations as well, because you know what you don't want is someone having a really difficult time and then not able to get in touch with their local councillor. The question in there, I think, Tom, particularly was around the scale of the liabilities.
Go ahead.
So the scale of the liabilities in terms of the ICO, I'm not in a position to provide an answer on that, I'm afraid, from a data protection point of view.
I think in the light of this conversation, there are clearly some issues that are not spelt out as adequately as they should be. I think it's been a good discussion to help improve the policy going forward. So what I suggest we do is we take it away and we look at the issues raised in the chamber tonight, and we also look at particularly the wording around the USA, which has caused concern. And then we bring it back for further discussion and hopefully approval.
Thank you. I've just seen another contribution, Councillor Jafari Mabini.
Yeah, thanks, Lord Mayor. On the issue of now that we have the members form, I do think that we've kind of talked about obviously centralising the members' inquiries a lot, and obviously the members form has helped to do that. So I do wonder whether in those kind of situations where we've been following up casework, which is what a lot of us do on email, whether when we are away and we're saying we're away from our email, the officers could directly contact outcomes to residents, because otherwise there'll be a delay. And I do not feel safe putting an out of office that specifies that I'm away from my home address on public, to be honest, display, and I don't tend to do that. So I don't know whether that's possible with the members form for any members issues that have been risen for officers to directly contact, because obviously we've gained consent from the residents. And on the list of countries, just out of interest, I spoke at length to obviously a lot of the doctors who've been to visit Palestine in recent times, and Israel requires not just all of your devices to be handed in, but also any social media tags tend to be handed in and searched quite extensively. So I'm sure the doctors will be very happy to give you a bit more background on that if needed, Nigel. Thanks.
Right, a quick reply from Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I think I tabled effectively what I think is the right way forward here. This is a complex area. Officers and myself and others have worked our best to provide a sort of clear policy, but there's clearly areas where we need to do some more work. So I suggest, we just take it away and look at the points people have raised tonight and bring it back in its own good time when it's ready.
Okay, thank you. So, I think we've heard that there may be some things that need to be changed within it, but we can vote to adopt it tonight because part of the policy says that it will be continuously reviewed. So we could at least, I think officers are quite keen that we get the ball rolling on this to protect the council systems. So we could do it on the understanding that it will be, all these things we've discussed today will be taken into account. How does that lie with you, Councillor Chapman?
Well, I would be happy with that, but in the end, it's a decision of the council. It's in front of the council tonight. It's not just in front of me. So therefore, I suggest you put that proposal to the vote.
Okay, I will do that just after Councillor Raymond last comment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Because there's a blanket ban at the moment, I don't think the council is exposed to any danger because we always ask before we can do anything at the moment. So at the moment, there's a blanket ban. So I don't think by Councillor Chapman taking this away is going to expose the council to any danger that it's not in at the moment. So instead of trying to rush it through, why not just get it right?
Okay, but it would mean that we delay a time when any of us could take our devices overseas if we don't get started on it now. Okay, Councillor Power's going to make that point too. So I think it sounds like there's going to be a bit of a... People are actually going to have to think about whether they want to approve this then or not. So we have the proposal...
Sorry, Lord Mayor, may I suggest that the next council's only a few weeks, so it's in November. So if we work hard and fast on the issues that have been raised tonight, I'm confident that officers will be in a position to advise me to bring it forward for approval at that meeting. So I do suggest we go back to my original proposal, because the status quo at the moment is that you can't access your emails from abroad. That's the status quo. So that keeps the lid on things, if you in inverted commas, at least for the moment, and then we'll go back and look at these. But some of them are quite technical and difficult issues, and I think we need a bit more completeness and a bit more investigation of the points raised in the chamber tonight.
Okay, so then we will vote on the initial proposal, but if you're thinking that you don't want it to be brought in now and would like to see it on, Councillor Chapman's assuring us that it would come back to the next council meeting in a modified form, then you should vote against approving the implementation of the working overseas policy and procedure today. But if you're happy for it to go now so that we can start using the devices abroad, then vote to approve it. Okay? Happy with that? Yes.
So the people who already proposed and second, are they standing for this vote?
Yes,
no,
I suppose I still
I've made
proposing.
I've made clear my view that I think we should take it away and look at it again. So I don't really want, to be honest, the council approving something in principle which is going to have to come back for review and further discussion does not seem to be a wise way forward. So I suggest, in effect, what I'm saying to you is I'm withdrawing it from you, and therefore I don't really want to have a vote on it, Lord Mayor, if you don't mind, because we'll be voting on something which is not on the table.
Okay, in that case, if you're withdrawing your proposal, I'll just check with the monitoring officer whether you can simply withdraw it. Right. Okay, everybody. Because it has been formally proposed and seconded, we are going to have to vote on it. So probably what would be to vote against it. If that happens, we'll see if that happens, then we will be asked to ask you to bring a alternative recommendation, which presumably will be that you would like to withdraw it and bring a fresh version to the next council. And we can vote for that. Okay? So
my point of order is still stand. The person who proposed and second, are they standing still with their proposals? If they're withdrawing, how can you put into vote? You find somebody who can propose and second.
They can't withdraw it, is the status. So it's not being withdrawn, but we're going to vote on it now. Okay? So can I see all those in favour of adopting this policy now? Right. Okay. Can I see all of those against adopting this policy now? Okay. All right. Excellent. Super. Good. Any abstentions? Oh, thank you, Chris. Okay. Excellent. Principled stand there. So that item falls. So I'm then going to ask Councillor Chapman if he has an alternative recommendation.
Yes, I need to formally articulate it again, okay. The recommendation is that, obviously, the council having decided to withdraw it, we'll bring it back for the next council meeting in November, revised for the approval of the council.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The seconder for that? Thank you, various seconders. Thank you. Okay, can I see all those in favour of this new recommendation? Excellent. I think that is unanimous. Right. Thank you very much. Okay. Good. So we are now on to questions on Cabinet minutes. We've got 15 minutes for this item, and there are two separate sets of Cabinet minutes. The first one is from August the 13th. Are there any questions on the August the 13th Cabinet minutes? Nope. Good. Entirely uncontroversial. So are there any questions on the minutes of the Cabinet meeting of September the 17th? Right, Councillor Smoten and then Fairweather.
Thank you very much. A quick question on temporary accommodation. At previous scrutiny, there had been some suggestion that there was an amount of change to the amount of sort of engagement, and especially face-to-face engagement, that was required in the course of entering TA. And I just wondered if we could get an update regarding what, if anything, has changed already or is expected to in that respect, and what's the approach to making sure that that doesn't have an impact on people who we feel really should be receiving TA or TA support.
Yeah, I look forward to updating Council in due course about plans to expand the number of units of temporary accommodation that the Council has access to, and that will include units with far more support than we have in place at the moment, because as you said, that is an identified need. So yeah, I look forward to being able to share more detail with you about that, maybe in the next 2 months or so.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fairweather.
Yes, I'd like to ask about item 58, the purchase of 4 single compartment top loading food waste refuse vehicles. I find this very curious. We have a situation where effectively the council is acting as a vehicle leasing company to ODS. I'd like to know why ODS are not leasing vehicles from a commercial bank or something like that, rather than from the council. This is using up over £1 million worth of capital investment, which I'm sure could be used in much more beneficial ways than subsidising ODS.
Anybody like to answer that? Councillor Chapman?
Well, I mean, these are the rules that we've laid down by which ODS can acquire expensive kit and vehicles. And the way it works, now Councillor Turner may want to come in too, is that the council purchases them. They are then leased back to ODS. ODS pays the cost of that, and it also pays an additional amount of money to cover the fact that the councils had to borrow money in order to purchase what are often quite expensive pieces of kit and expensive vehicles. And that's the way we work it. I don't think there's any particular problem with this. I mean, you know, everybody gets what they need. The council is able to effectively lend money to ODS to do this and acquire the vehicles. They get paid a slight extra interest, I think. I'm looking at the Section 151 officer who's nodding when I say this. And ODS gets what it needs. So I don't understand really what the problem is.
Okay, I think Councillor Turner might like to weigh in on that as well.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that ODS, I think ODS could probably choose other procurement routes if it wanted to, but it wouldn't be beneficial. And of course, we are talking about a company which is wholly owned by the council. So if, for example, ODS thought, right, let's entertain a different private leasing arrangement, and that was more costly, then that would affect the dividend coming back to the council. You know, there are times in our interactions with our companies, I can think of other examples as well, where it's much more effective for the council to be the one doing the borrowing because of our greater creditworthiness than any company, our access to Public Works Loans Board and the like. No, this is absolutely the most cost-effective arrangement. You know, and I'm a bit surprised to hear this aspect of the Oxford model being challenged. I mean, you know, I know a lot of neighbouring authorities, including those led by other political parties, sort of go down the outsourcing route, but that's not something we're intending to explore.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on those minutes? No, excellent. Right. Then we don't need to vote on anything about that, do we? No. Good. So straight on to the questions on notice from members of the council to cabinet members. So I think the first one, starting with Councillor Brown. So question SB1. Councillor Malik, do you have a follow-up?
I do, Lord Mayor. I am disappointed with the answer because what I don't understand is all I ask is this council passed the motion. The answer could have been in the local plan and the air quality action, this administration supports the filters. I mean, her party and her group has very contradictory position. Her own councillor turns up and the congestion charges, opposes the charges. The leader of the county council labour group supports the charges, the St. Clements councillor her turn up, and then her own leader, county council, and herself and our local MP writes a letter opposing the congestion charge. I mean, people of Oxford wants to know what your policy is. Where do you stand on it?
I'm not sure there was a question in there, Lord Mayor, but I'll give it a whirl. Firstly, I don't recognise that particular description. It is absolutely clear that Labour Party locally has been completely against the congestion charge. I'm aware that a member of our group turned up. She was speaking in a personal capacity, not as a member of our group, when she made those representations. And that has been made very clear already. As a member of the County Council, as well as this council, Councillor Malik, you'll be well aware that it's the County Council that sets transport policy. What this council does is makes its requirements clear to the Transport Authority about what we want it to do. They've been very, very clear with us over quite a lengthy period now that they're not interested in listening to the views of the City Council when it comes to the detail of transport policy. You know, as and when we are a unitary council making our own transport policy, we will be able to make our own decisions. Up until that point, we are not.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to question SB2. Councillor Malik, do you have a follow-up on that one? And on question 3?
I do. I have asked this question probably a fourth time. She will say there is no question in it. The question is, do you have anything against of the people of Palestine not to putting the flag on this council? Because it's the fourth time. We've done it for Ukraine, rightly so. We have a friendship with Ramallah, rightly so. Ramallah is not run by Hamas. It's nothing to do with the conflict. Genocide being committed in Palestine, which your party still supports. I know the Israeli lobby is very strong in your party, and they have great influence. But here we're talking about humanity. Why don't we fly a flag of Palestine in solidarity of our twin city?
Lord Mayor, it appears that Councillor Malik hasn't actually read my response, which actually says that I would propose that we do fly the Palestine flag if the Mayor of Ramallah comes to visit, as I hope he will.
Thank you. Okay, question SB4. Councillor Goddard, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, my Lord Mayor. Councillor Brown, you refer to 56% of inquiries receiving a response within 5 days. 5 days is the target, isn't it? 56% doesn't sound that good to me. And I've certainly had, I don't know whether colleagues have shared this experience, the experience of quite a lot of inquiries basically disappearing into the ether after I've filled out the form. Could we do something about it? I've also had the experience of officers, probably quite rightly, whom I've contacted directly without using the form, saying, please go away and use the form. It's suboptimal.
I would agree. And I am very well aware that there is a review going on into the members' inquiry system. I think the one thing I would say is that this is data that we've never had before. because before that system was introduced, we had no way of actually monitoring how well members' inquiries were actually being responded to, because there just simply wasn't a sort of way of doing that. So whilst I agree that there's still quite a long way to go before it's going to in any shape or form meet my requirements and I think the requirements of most members, I think it is a start. And I'm personally looking forward to seeing the results of that review in a bit more detail. But I think there is still quite a lot of work to do. So, yeah, I agree.
Thank you. SB5, Councillor Powell, have you got a follow-up?
No, and no as well on 6 and 7. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. All good from me.
Thank you for speeding that up. Excellent. Okay, so we then turn to Councillor Turner. First question for you, ET1. Councillor Miles, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. So you note that business rate avoidance through Phoenix shops is not as prevalent in Oxford as in other geographies, so like London. But how prevalent is the issue? Do you have any data on that? And have you got a process in place to identify specific retail units where this is a frequently occurring problem? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the question. I might need to get officers to work with me to give a slightly more detailed follow-up to the councillor. So when we're doing our lettings work, then of course we can be really proactive here. And sometimes people will have the facility to make a transfer release, and we may not be able to withhold that consent depending on the exact terms of the lease and so on. And so we're not in a position of complete control. That isn't the case for all. That isn't the case for all landowners. Obviously, if somebody else owns a shop and rents it out, then they may well lend it out to someone who isn't the person that we would choose, and then we're playing catch up because, of course, then we simply enforce the business rates liability. I think our business rate collection rates are good, but and I think also part of this issue about the type of shops that are being described is that there are various ways in which the companies concerned fold themselves, disappear, and so there are various things, not just business rates they end up not paying. It's really difficult when we're not the landlord. I mean, I can also share, I think, with the council that we're in touch with a number of major landlords in the city centre to try to bear down on the sort of shop which we wouldn't want to see a lot more of and try and keep the things as we would want. So that's part of what we're doing. On the nuts and bolts of the business rates and supplementary question, I can't ad-lib that. I'll need to drop Catherine a line, and maybe actually just if you've got the text of your supplementary or something like that, so I can make sure I'm asking the officers the exact right question, if that's all right. Cheers.
Thanks, Councillor Turner. Okay, ET2, Councillor Mundy, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, thank you. So thank you for the figure on the use of civil enforcement agents for council tax debts in the last financial year. Could the Cabinet member tell us, please, what the recent trajectory is in terms of the numbers of cases going to civil enforcement agents over the last 5 years? Is that an increase, decrease, flatlining? Thank you.
So with this, and I suspect the next supplementary, Edward very kindly gave me a heads up, and I immediately went off to find information and got the out of office, and the officer in question is on holiday till tomorrow. So I'll need to drop you a line. I'm sorry again. I'm not going to. I've got an idea, but I'm not going to ad-lib it and risk giving the wrong information.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Mundy, 83. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah. So I did send this to Councillor Turner, so he will note there is a section in our policy that basically notes that vulnerability itself does not mean that individuals would not be sent civil enforcement agents, bailiffs, to their homes. I wanted to ask the Cabinet member if he would support the editing or removal of that part of the policy that states the Council have determined that vulnerability itself does not stop the use of civil enforcement agents, so that we can confirm what he's written in his written response, which is that we wouldn't send civil enforcement agents to the homes of people that we found to be vulnerable.
So what I said in the answer does stand, and I understand where Edward's going with this, and it's a fair comment. So yeah, we can look at that more broadly. As I said to Edward, I'm happy to pick this up and have a conversation with Income's team as well. I've done that in the past with other interested members. It's an area where we genuinely, I think, want to challenge ourselves. We need to challenge ourselves about collecting monies which are owed to the council. That's really important. We need that to provide the services that we do, but we also want to be responsive to vulnerable people. I mean, the other thing I would say is I'm particularly, and I know it's something close to his heart, but I think we need the dialogue with those at the front end, particularly the advice agencies. A number of us sit as observers or otherwise as trustees on the board of advice agencies, and I'd like to get a bit of feedback now and then about what their experience of supporting people is, and also that feedback should be coming directly to our teams if things aren't working for some reason. Then we can be picking that up, saying that's another part of what we ought to be trying to do.
Thanks. Again, Councillor Mundy, ET4, do you have a supplementary?
My next supplementary is ET7.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Off you go, ET7.
So, given that there's been no impact assessment in the last 5 years, so let's say since COVID, in terms of the impact of our policy on the use of civil enforcement agents, would the Cabinet member support an impact assessment of our CEA use and the policy on council tax debt collection, notwithstanding the current commitment on vulnerable people, to ensure that we understand the full impact of our current policy? Thank you.
So, I think my answer is I think we ought to do the impact assessment when we do the policy. I'm not sure quite how it would work to do an impact assessment of a practice, if you see what I mean, but this is a policy that we review, and we ought to do an impact assessment then. And if we need to review the policy, and as I say, I'm very happy to have conversations with anyone about the policy, then we should do an impact assessment as part of that process, rather than do a standalone bespoke process now. But to cut to the chase, and without, as I say, to sort of recut to the chase of what I think the council is getting at, we need to be responsible in our use of enforcement agents. We shouldn't be pursuing people who are vulnerable in an inappropriate way, and the council's read that we're dealing with those cases in-house. We need to use enforcement agents because, unfortunately, sometimes otherwise the council won't be paid monies that are owing. And we need to be really adept at signposting people to where they can get help, because enforcement agents visiting or otherwise contacting people is not going to be often the most helpful way for people to resolve their money situation. Instead, we ought to be helping people to go to advice agencies. So if I get information from members of the public or from advice agencies saying things aren't working, then my response will be, let's talk about it, let's have another look at the policy, let's see what we can do to get things right. And you know, that's a commitment I make really to any member in this chamber. If you've got evidence that things aren't working, please come forward and we'll talk about it, and we'll look at it with the officers. Of course, we owe it to council taxpayers to collect in the money, but we don't want to be doing that in a way which is overly harsh or counterproductive. And I suppose I'd like any conversations we have to be informed by evidence and practice, rather than, if you like, based around the theory of it.
Thank you. Okay. ET8, Councillor Muddiman, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Thank you. Just a quick one. I think it's inferred in your response, but just to check, can you confirm that you have no concerns about Balfour Beatty's reputation and record?
I think that's an inference too far. My concern, what I do, right, is I come to council and I propose policies like our procurement policy, and you know, people can challenge those and people can feed into them. I don't remember any proposed amendments to our procurement policy. I remember a really good discussion with Scrutiny, and then I want to see that policy implemented. And then when if we go to another iteration of our procurement policies, and people say actually that policy's not adequate and it doesn't cover enough things, then the council as a whole ought to be changing the policy. If we don't follow our policies with these sort of things, if we say, well, this particular company might have done things that aren't covered by the policy, but we don't feel it's right to be giving them business, then of course we make ourselves vulnerable to a legal challenge. We could end up paying money to that company by way of compensation. So I'm well aware that I've got, at the time of the budget, a couple of issues to pick up that were raised in a council motion about procurement, and we'll be doing that. We've given that undertaking to councillors. If there are other concerns, other suggestions people want to make in this area, then please go ahead and make them. But I think the point we're trying to make here is we have a policy. I think it's a very good policy. We implement the policy. We didn't exclude this company. That I'm not going to say that I've got no concerns about the sort of activity the question describes. Of course I do. But we as a council, if we don't follow our own policies, we can make ourselves vulnerable to paying compensation to people that are last resort people we want to be paying money to. I hope that's clear, and very happy to pick up the conversation.
Thank you. Question 89, Councillor Powell. Follow up?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Turner, for your response. Firstly, I completely acknowledge the point that the majority of flags we've seen in Oxford are indeed on county council property. My reason for asking the question was that in other places where flags have been removed, certain bad faith actors have sought to present that as in some way a criticism of the flag and its nature, and therefore it was my view that having a clear statement on record might be helpful in terms of avoiding that should a flag in future be affixed. And therefore, in light of that, and apologies for what might seem a slightly pedantic question, you have said that the City Council can remove it. Can we infer from that that you're merely stating the possibility of us doing so, or are you rather saying that if a complaint is raised, we will remove it? Could you just clarify what the can there is meaning?
Jeepers. Okay. This is good as well. The leaders issued a statement has made comments on flags, saying the lead member ODS has made comments on flags. It's my go now. I suppose it depends a bit on the nature. Is it reported? What's the nature of the problem, and so on. I mean, clearly, if a council building becomes dysfunctional because of a flag which is there, we're obviously going to rush to take it down. And if it's not reported, well, we're not going to take it down. I mean, for what it's worth, my views on this whole matter, my views are, I love the flag, I love my country, and I hate people that seek to sow seeds of division in our communities by abusing the flag in that way. That's my personal view.
Thank you. Okay. No, I don't think we need a point of information now. Sorry. Thank you. So we're going to move on to questions for Councillor Railton. Question 1, is there a follow-up from Councillor Muddiman?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you. So I'm more confused than I was at the beginning. The leader of your group just said in an earlier statement to a previous question that you are against the congestion charge. But here it seems to me that you're saying that you think it would work and it would do what it's designed to do. So I just wondered if you can confirm that is what you're saying. You do think it would work, and but you do say you would you would design it differently. So could you confirm that you're saying yes, it would work, but what specific things would you do differently?
Okay, so saying something will probably work and saying you support it are definitely not the same thing. Like, generally, it's not the same thing. I'm definitely also not going to redesign a congestion charge in the middle of full council. I think, our group's position has been very clear on this. We think charging is regressive. There we go.
Thank you. Okay, question AR2, Councillor Muddiman, do you have a follow-up on this one?
Yes, thank you. On this one, would you support the building of a multi-storey car park on the Beckett Street current car park?
Okay, so it's kind of very much not up to me, but I mean, personally, I would, genuinely, personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of my group, the council, whatever. I think I would like to see a redevelopment of the Oxford station with as little car parking as possible. You know, the way a new station is delivered in this city is using the land value from the existing Beckett Street car park. And if you put a great big multi-storey car park on that, you know, you reduce the land value and therefore make delivering a redeveloped and better station that the city very much needs, because our current station is Cambridge is so much better, is lacking. So, yes, that's what I've got.
Yes, stop digging. Yes. Thank you. So, moving on now to questions to Councillor Ashad. So, LA1, Councillor Powell, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
LA2, Councillor Robinson, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Then moving to questions for Councillor Chapman. NC1, Councillor Malik, do you have a follow-up? No. Right. NC2, Councillor Goddard, do you have a follow-up? Sorry, did you say? NC3 is not impacting me. Councillor Miles, do you have a follow-up for NC3? NC4, Councillor Muddiman.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick one. Can you just does ODS use only one type of herbicide? Does ODS only use one type, so one brand, one type of herbicide, or does it use multiple? Regardless of whether it's glyphosate based, does it only use, that's what I was trying to get, does it only use one type of herbicide?
I would have to go back and look into that. I mean, if you're asking about herbicides as a whole, as against glyphosate-based herbicides, then I will have to go back and ask whether they use anything else. I'm not aware they use anything else, but I will check for you. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then questions for Councillor Hollingsworth. AH1, Councillor Miles, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. With regards to sort of vocational groups within the city that contribute to our economy, you talk about employee-led housing schemes in the local plan. And so what action has the council taken to work with the schools and hospitals to discuss housing schemes specifically for teachers at state schools and nurses in our public sector hospitals to address the shortage of accommodation for these vocational groups in the city? Thank you.
Sorry, just trying to find the right button on the new technology. There are specific policies on specific sites in the current local plan, which shows exactly these conversations between the hospitals as landowners and employers, and there are sites that are identified in that. And similarly, the same discussion took place with schools who weighed up whether or not they wish to pursue that opportunity, and the policy allows them to do so. I think in the end schools decided that was not an approach they felt worked with their workforces, and that is why there is no policy. But those conversations have and continue to take place and will do in the run-up to this local plan, and again it will be down to the specific landowners to decide whether they wish to have specific allocations in the way that the current local plan has.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed NC5, so just going back to Councillor Chapman and Councillor Muddiman, do you have a follow-up for that? Yes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to say, it seems that Cambridge not only has a better train station, as Councillor Renton just said, they're also, much better at not using herbicides. So I just wondered if you could answer the question, because you've given me a lovely response, but you haven't actually answered the question. Why is Oxford not as committed as Cambridge to protecting our biodiversity, water, soil and air?
With respect, Councillor, I think I have answered the question. I mean, we have made choices here about the way in which we want to tackle weeds in the city. We did a thorough review back in 2023. I can't speak for the way Cambridge operates. I can only speak for the way Oxford operates. And we are operating in the most cost-effective and sensible way. And that's all I can really say. I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes we get councils, and I'm not sure Cambridge is in this place, who, how can I put this nicely, take forward a position about the use of glyphosate-based weed killer, which when they actually have to come and enact it, find it extremely difficult to do so. A, they can't get the staff to do it. B, they find the costs are much greater. C, they find it's less effective. And therefore, that's why we have the policy we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Returning to AH2, Councillor Mudderman, do you have a supplementary? And for AH3? AH5? AH6? Okay, so AH7, Councillor Miles.
Thank you very much. On the car wash behind South Parade, I will update officers on this location because there's some ambiguity with the numbering, but there is advertised and operational a car wash behind South Parade, which we need to determine the planning status for. With respect to the hand car wash on the Abingdon Road, it's noted in the answer that further consideration was given at the time as how to proceed with the enforcement notice on this site, but it doesn't appear to have been pursued. Why was this not pursued, and is the Labour administration tacitly supporting a company that is willing to break the rules in a sector where we know issues of human trafficking and forced labour exist? Thank you.
Right, I think there was 3 elements to that which I will try and reply to. So first, the specific wording, this was owing to this question being allocated to the incorrect person, so I didn't get much warning about this one until I identified it was there. So the specific wording about does not appear to have been pursued. I don't know, but do not worry, I will be finding out, and you and the council will find out in due course. Second element is in terms of the council's position, I would point you to the first sentence of the second paragraph, 2 unsuccessful prosecutions for unauthorised use. That was a council going to the absolute limit in terms of what an enforcement process like this, and if you do not win, then it is very frustrating, and that is the frustration that face the authority as a result of that decision, which one can form one's own judgment on. Obviously, I wasn't a councillor at the time. I'm not sure you were. But I was well aware of it at the time. And thirdly, I am well aware of the potential links broadly between these kind of operations and modern slavery. I don't have any evidence whatsoever, and I'd be interested if you did, that these operators are responsible for modern slavery, and I would be very cautious about the wording that you used in the question without that evidence.
Thank you. AH8, Councillor Smoten, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Could I, in response to this one, could I draw Councillor Hollingsworth's attention particularly to, there was a case that was raised with me of a local pro-cycling activist who, ideally speaking, would submit questions on comments on planning applications about cycle parking, cycle safety for access, etc., but who's been subject to substantial online abuse campaigns, and at the moment that would entail publishing their address in order to do so, and just sort of see whether the abusers care to come and do so in person. I would draw his attention to as practiced by other authorities and advice from the LGA about GDPR consistent and legally compliant ways to use phrasings along the lines of comments from near neighbours, comments from residents of other neighbourhoods, etc., so that addresses are only published when they are strictly required by law. For example, I'm aware that when things go to appeal at PINs, I believe there's a hard requirement at that point to publish. But nonetheless, it means that in more cases, personal details, such as a person's home address, are only published when it really is necessary by law or really in the public interest.
Right. I think the question was, can I draw to Councillor Hollingsworth's attention? I was quite tempted to say yes. But yes, because I think there are a range of views on this issue, and I think you are right to raise the one that you do raise. And those views are both us as politicians, members of the public, and planning officers, and they go in different divergent directions. I think it is important over particularly issues like that, and people who feel perhaps in terms of if they wish to issue a comment in favour of an application where there is a broad and loud public opinion against it, for whatever that reason,
you know, if you're the developer or a friend of the landowner, there's a whole range of reasons why you might be uncomfortable putting your name forward with your contact details made in that way. So I think I will stick to the answer yes, and discuss with officers where, as I said, there are very strong views in both directions.
Thank you. Okay, AH9, Councillor Miles, do you have a supplementary? No. Great. Okay, moving on to questions to Councillor Mkongwe. CM1, Councillor Gant, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. What is the notional value at the gate, as it were, of services which were provided free under this scheme and therefore potentially a loss to the council had they been paid for?
Sorry, I've answered the question that no amount of money was provided for free. Thank you.
No, you don't get a guess. You don't get to ask a second time. Sorry, that's the answer that we've been given. CM2, Councillor Jafari Marbini.
Thank you. Yes, there is a follow-up. So actually, from my own experience at the gyms, at the pools, and from experience of those in the community who speak to me, it's not just a lack of women lifeguards, it's that it's not a priority for when the time comes for the gym to, for the men who are in the pool to be asked to leave. Men are just walking around who don't need to be in the women's only session. So it's not just about the lifeguards, it's also that the swimming pools are just not prioritizing getting the space kind of set up for what it's meant to be doing. And in fact, one of the Wellness Together programs, which the County Council sponsored and the city actually supported, the coach for that has really, really struggled to find the appropriate times for her swimming lessons because of this issue. So it's not just about an issue of the women swimming coaches, which I know is a national issue, which has been going on since before the pandemic when Louise was the cabinet member for Healthy Oxford, because we've had this conversation and this work has been going on for a long time. But it's actually, I don't know whether whether there are any ways of changing the way the staff are actually tackling this and how much they're prioritizing getting the space so that it serves the purpose that it's advertised to do. Thank you.
Thank you. You thought the question you did ask is about the recruitment, but having you said that, I can follow up that with officers and come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on now to questions to Councillor Smith. LS1, Councillor Roll, do you have a follow-up? No, thanks. LS2, Councillor Jafari Marbini, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. Councillor Otieno has been also involved in this discussion for quite a long time, and we have really tried every avenue to get A2 Dominion to actually do something about this situation, and it's been going on for a long time. And I would really, I would welcome some input, because it's really difficult for people to be encouraged to cycle where they can't actually keep their bike.
I didn't hear a question in that. LS4, LS3 now, do you have a follow-up on that one?
No, thanks.
LS4?
Does the cabinet member have a time frame for when the damaged fences might be fixed or relocated? Because that's been, again, long-standing. I just wondered about a timeline.
I will need to write to the councillor with a timeline after consulting with the builders.
Okay, thank you for undertaking for that. LS5, is there a follow-up? Councillor Jafari Marbini.
There is, sorry, follow-up question. It's not about, my question specifically wasn't about migrant voices. My question specifically was about humanising some of the asylum seekers at the hotel. There's actually quite a lot of specific things that they're doing in the local community. I think we had a meeting at the hotel that you were at, and there are lots of examples of this. I was wondering, it's not about within another strategy having some migrant voices, but specifically about humanising the people at the hotel. I wondered if you had a media strategy or a plans for a media strategy around that, specifically around the people at the hotel, not migrants. I mean, you know, 2/3 of people in Oxford have a parent who was born elsewhere.
Yeah, just to reiterate what's in the written answer, I mean, as we heard, there are hotel residents that are really getting involved with a number of projects, you know, that are in receipt of community impact funding from the council. So, yeah, I'll be seeking out opportunities to feature them in some of the publicity that we're doing around that work.
Thanks. Okay. LS6, Councillor Powell, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you, and neither on LS7, but thank you very much to the Cabinet Member for the responses.
Thank you. LS8, Councillor Jafari Marbini, do you have a follow-up?
Has it been made clear to you why the roadwork subcontractor was replaced, please?
I'm not going, in public session, I'm not going to go into contractual details between two parties, you know, neither of which are actually the council. But Hill, the builders, who are working on the project and being managed by Peabody, Hill subcontracted the highways work to Nexus. Nexus are no longer working on that site, and Hill are looking to replace them. And I've been told they hope to have a replacement contractor in place during the middle of this month. So I really hope that, you know, they do, and that's successful, and we can get work restarted as soon as possible.
Thank you. Okay, LS9, Councillor Jafari Marbini, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
And how about for number 10?
Yes, please. So is there a timetable for the governance processes of the community centre in place? Timetable for that? Thanks.
We've said repeatedly, and this applies to East Oxford Community Centre when it opens later this year, as well as Blackbird Leys Leisure Centre when it opens, Community Centre. We will run it directly for 2 years. And at that point, after 2 years, once we've dealt with any snagging issues, once we've, you know, established costs and, you know, really understand how the centre is working, and are able to share useful information to interested groups about that, we feel at that point it would be worth reviewing the situation and talking to any groups that are interested in taking over the management of the centres.
Right, thank you very much, Cabinet members. So at this point, we would have gone to our public address, but he is not here, unless he's just a second arrived. Nope, he's still not here. So I think we will perhaps just move on and get our two outside organisation reports, outside organisation and Scrutiny Committee report done before we go for a break. So, so can I call on Councillor Shad to introduce the report on the Oxford Safer Communities Partnership?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Oxford Safer Communities Partnership brings together organisations to tackle the Oxford community's safety priorities. So these priorities are identified by a strategic intelligence assessment, and it includes violence against women and girls, and modern slavery, antisocial behaviour, serious violence, and preventing extremism. So I commend this report to you, and it details some of the work of our officers and partners who are delivering that continues to make Oxford a safe, clean and inclusive city.
Thank you very much. So are there any questions from members of council on the report? Councillor Raymond.
Thank you for the report. Recently, our licensing committee voted to abolish the SSP in areas where there's lots of nighttime economy, potentially lots of violence against women and children, and a protection for the communities that live in that area. How does a cabinet member sort of juggle the two and feels without the SSP, how are we going to be stronger in protecting the most vulnerable, especially in the nighttime economy?
I've been informed that this actually, thank you for your question, it relates to a previous question. the item in which we withdrew. But I would also like to say at this point that we work very strongly with community partnerships that we have in the council, and we always try to address and work in collaboration when issues are high severity.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the point there also is that the report you're referring to having been withdrawn, so that's not relevant for this discussion now.
Lord Mayor, can I just... Yeah, the report's been withdrawn. We haven't voted on the report, except that that policy hasn't been in place yet. But the licensing committee as a whole voted to suspend the SSP. Now, I'm just wondering how the cabinet member circumvents those two situations. Potentially we won't have an SSP, but at the moment it's suspended. So that was the question. I know we haven't voted on it at the moment.
I think I'm going to say thank you for that question, but it is probably not something I'm not going to ask our cabinet member to make a policy decision on the hoof at this point. Councillor Miles.
Thank you. So the report identifies a cluster of offences in the city centre in East Oxford, which the report suggests are linked to the nighttime economy, which I understand from an earlier announcement today that you're seeking to be promoting. And so I want to really understand what your priorities are as a Labour administration and understand what action you're going to take through using the policy instruments available to your disposal to address these identified issues of these hotspots of crime and disorder in these two locations. So what action are you going to take, given that with respect to your the earlier point that you've dismissed, that we're not going to be continuing, it sounds like, with the special saturation policy. So what action are you going to take to address the crime and disorder in these two locations? Working collaboratively with the police that have proactively asked and requested that action is taken related to a special saturation policy in these locations. Thank you.
Alex, would it be possible, Councillor Alex Hollingsworth, to pick up the first part and I'll pick up the second?
Yeah, I mean, effectively, the question is now related to two sets of portfolios. So I've got responsibility for events to the extent of nighttime economy, and Councillor Arshad has responsibility to the criminal behaviour element and is being asked questions which are veering somewhat off the Oxford Safer Communities Partnerships annual update. But since we're okay with that, we'll stick with that. I would say that if one sees nightlife, just ordinary people going out of an evening, then and treats that as an essentially criminal behaviour, yes, you can likely end up with a series of decisions, but I don't think they're going to be helpful. It's clearly one where you've got to balance a whole range of things. I appreciate that the saturation policy we're not discussing because of a technical issue, but as the person who inadvertently raised a 2-hour discussion when I intended to raise a 5-minute discussion with the licensing committee, the issue is that this council elected rightly, I think, to have a saturation policy because of a way in which nightlife was operating 20 years ago. If one is to reflect on it now, and it's interesting, and Councillor Raymond is one of the small number of us in this chamber who was born here, spent his entire life here. The vast majority of us are incomers because that's the nature of our city. And his reflections in that initial licensing scrutiny, which were informal, I'm not saying it's any policy on his part, but you can see a city that is changing not necessarily in a positive way, and it is true of nightlife in a whole range of towns and cities up and down the country. So it's all about striking a balance. So I would say, rather than trying to kind of suggest to link a paragraph and say, well, nightlife's clearly crime causing, therefore we shouldn't have it. It sounds suspiciously like one of those kind of, approaches which we've seen in cities for thousands of years of, shut the gates and tell everyone to be at home. That's not how life works. And so you've got to strike a balance. But equally, and I will finish my bit and come on to Councillor Arshad's bit, there are, of course, increased criminal activities which can be connected to nightlife which isn't being looked after, and that was why we introduced that saturation policy in the first place. So it's always a question of striking a balance. But it's a balance between the two things. It's not picking it out and just making it a criminal issue. It's not.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I would also like to add on that point is that the Night Safe Oxford works with very different venues to keep women and girls safe within the late night entertainment areas. And Oxford City Angels has been a success story, receiving an award from the police and the crime commissioner for their work. For me, at Oxford City Council, I think one of the key objectives is to continue what we're doing, and that's working in our Oxford Community Partnership, is making sure that we discuss the ongoing violent crime that happens in our city, especially for our youth, which is why, thankfully, we've appointed and putting the money where the mouth is in terms of allocating our engagement programs with our youth and making sure that people continue to use those services as they will come into fruition throughout the year. And that is something I'm really passionate about because I'm born and bred in the city, and I want to make sure that people who, just like me, have places to go, have things to do, and inspire not only themselves and their family, but their communities, and wake to help people, to serve people. And I think that these role models that we find at these community incentives that we've approved and will hopefully work in healthier relationships, not just for the mind, but physically as well. So that is one of the key objectives that I'd love to continue working towards for our youth. There are other, and I've got, a big list here in front of me that I could go on. Thames Valley have provided from their recording their system with Oxford City Council's QL system, and it goes on to say that our serious violence has fallen over the last 6 years, with Oxford experiencing the largest percentage in reduction. For example, in 2018, there were 181 serious violent crimes compared to 129 reports in 2024, with 28.7 reduction. Most of the serious violence reports occur within nighttime entertainment areas that are Cali Road and City Centre, but we're working actively, again, with the police to make sure that we can do our best in making sure that it's reduced and come to stop.
Thank you. So any other questions on the Oxford Safer Communities Partnership annual update, which is what we're discussing? Councillor Malik and then Mundy.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Oxford Community Partnership does a great work, there's no doubt about that. But rightly, the cabinet member just have alluded where the night crime happens. So I have two questions. Number one, as a council, have we asked the police presence to be increased? Because policing obviously over the year has changed due to subject cuts, the way the policing is done modernizedly, either a look on the CCTV, but the bobby on the beat and the people on the street. If the foots are not on the ground, I think then the public do not behave well. But if you see the officers, then they do. So have we asked them to increase, because we know where the hot spots are, so have we asked them to increase their visibility? And secondly, Night Safe does a great work, as the cabinet member said. Can I ask the cabinet member a question? When was the last time she went out on a round with a Night Safe or any of the policing team to see what the actually problems are? Because if you haven't been out, it's all right to read a report. What's happening actually on the ground?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Yes, we have increased our police presence in Cowley Road area in East Oxford. I work very closely with the Chief Constable and the inspectors in Oxford City, not just now and again, but quite regularly. And yes, I am very well aware, for someone who's grown up nearly off the Cowley Road, I am very much aware, and I do my patrolling with the Night Safe. So that's that there.
Thank you. Councillor Mundy.
Thank you. So I wanted to raise a couple of points, really. So we've brought up the fact that we had the licensing meeting where the SSP was discussed, and obviously the impact that can be had emanating from the nighttime economy in terms of serious crimes and also public safety and risk to the safety of women and children. Now, I just wanted, in the context of what we've heard earlier in the meeting, where we have our new champion for the nighttime economy, James Taylor, I just want to be sure that our cabinet member for Safer Oxford is going to robustly defend the interests of the city when it comes to safety and the safety of the nighttime economy, with her counterpart here, who's now the champion for the nighttime economy, in light of the fact that James, I'm sure you won't mind me saying, he was the one who proposed to get rid of the SSP, partly under the argument that it doesn't isn't going to have any impact on crime and that there isn't any need for it. And I thought, if you don't mind me saying,
Councillor, that's probably inappropriate to be bringing that into this meeting.
Well, it was a public meeting, and it was a public meeting, and it was being live broadcast. So that's not different information. That's something that's I'm just bringing that up as something I want to know that those two members sat opposite are going to be ready to have frank conversations with each other about how they want to ensure that their briefs are being understood. But I also wanted to question, I'm afraid, what Councillor Hollingsworth was saying. I think it was a little bit disingenuous, really, to suggest that the SSP is a way of frustrating the nighttime economy, and it's actually got nothing to do with that. It's ensuring that those who are seeking new licences and to amend licences are doing so understanding the impact of the nighttime economy and the impact of alcohol consumption, either off licence or on licence, is being done in a way so that the licensing objectives aren't being frustrated. And I know that Councillor Hollingsworth understands that. He just chose to make a point.
I do need you to bring you back to this report, which is what we're discussing.
So, Councillor Arshad, I would like to understand, please, that you're going to be ready for those robust conversations with your colleagues, in particular your new champion of the nighttime economy. Thank you.
Yes, please. That's a yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Good to know. Right. Any more comments on this annual update? No. In that case, can I just check you're all happy to note the report? Right. Great. Thank you. Then, are we happy to go and just get the Scrutiny Committee update report done, and then we will take a break for half an hour? Or are we just checking whether the speaker's here? Nope, still not here. Okay. Over to you, Councillor Powell, sorry.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Aware that I'm now the thing standing between many councillors and their dinner, I will keep this reasonably brief. So the Scrutiny Committee has met twice since the last full council. During that time, we've considered a number of important matters, including issues around the Oxpens River Bridge, the citizen and community engagement policy, and the budget review group scope for the coming year. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank officers, particularly Celeste, for the ongoing support of the Scrutiny Committee, and I'd also like to take this chance to thank Cabinet for their constructive engagement with many of our recommendations. We've had some very good discussions across that time, including some very long discussions, for which I thank Cabinet members. In light of the timing, I think I shall leave it there.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody, any questions from members of council on the scrutiny report? No. Excellent. Okay. Wonderful. Then, are you all happy to note the report?
Aye.
Right. Thank you. So, in that case, we will take a break now for 30 minutes. So, if you can all be back here by 15:15, and we'll start with the public address at that point. Right, welcome back everybody, and hopefully now our speaker is here. We have one public address this evening, which will be from Dan Glazebrook. Hello Dan, welcome, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. All right, greetings councillors. So almost 2,000 people, the vast majority of them local residents, have now signed a petition against Oxpens River Bridge and its connecting paths. There are many reasons people are up in arms. The ecological destruction involved, the lack of democratic consultation, the fact there are already 2 excellent pedestrian cycle bridges within a quarter of a mile of the site, the misuse of £10 million of public money intended to facilitate affordable housing. But what I want to focus on today is how the bridge singularly fails to meet its own intended purpose to provide a flood-proof connection from Oseley Mead to Oxpens. The local plan specifies the need for a new bridge linking Oseley Mead to the other side of the river and a flood-proof route out of Oseley Mead. These two things have subsequently been combined into plans for a single flood-proof connection reaching all the way from Oseley Mead across the river, as is made clear in several official documents. The problem is to reach the bridge from Oseley Mead, users would have to go across a stream and under a railway bridge along a section of the towpath that itself frequently floods. To solve this problem, the City Council commissioned Stantec to develop a project called Oseley Pathworks to create a new flood-proof path linking Oseley Mead to the planned new bridge. The preferred plan was to erect flood walls under the railway bridge, but the Environmental Agency vetoed this proposal in 2021 as it would cause further flooding elsewhere. Stantec's report admitted there's no solution available which adequately addresses the flooding issue whilst also meeting current safety standards for cycling and walking. This remains the case today. There's still no solution to the issue of flooding on the path between Oseley Mead and the proposed new bridge. This makes the bridge completely redundant as it utterly fails to provide the new flood-proof connection from Oseley Mead across the river, without which housing cannot be built on the site and which was the whole point of the project in the first place. Indeed, the diversion of £1.5 million Homes England funding for precisely such a flood-proof route out of Oseley Mead to instead build connecting paths for the bridge in Grampont Nature Park means the council now stands in breach of the terms of that grant and the criteria under which it was allocated, a matter we're pursuing with Homes England themselves. The City Council is now right on the verge of committing up to £14 million of public money and causing irrevocable damage to a cherished piece of countryside on our doorstep for a bridge that singularly fails to meet its basic purpose. We urge you, please do not be a party to this shocking waste of money and biodiversity. Surely no further funds should be committed so long as there remains no viable plan to flood-proof the connection between Oseley Mead and the new bridge. I'd also like to address the issue of the university's funding commitments to the scheme. A spokesperson for the university told the Oxford Mail back in January that the university, quote, last year agreed to make a contribution of around 10% of the cost of the new bridge after learning that cost increases had put its viability at risk. 10% at that time equated to more than £1 million of the project's projected costs. If the university had already committed more than £1 million last year, why is this financial commitment not appearing in the figures, well, it's before us today at the last cabinet actually? Why is the public purse being asked to guarantee the full 3.7 million in increased costs and not say 2.7 million, given $1 million from the university is already in the bag? Have the university now reneged on this commitment? And if the council is willing to commit the entirety of the increased costs from the public purse, what incentive is there for the university to contribute any money at all? Finally, I'd also like to address the issue of Balfour Beatty's position in the delivery of the scheme. If all goes according to plan, Balfour Beatty are set to be awarded the construction contract next month. Balfour Beatty are notorious. They're involved in the imposition of near-slavery conditions on their migrant workforce in Qatar. Just 4 years ago, they were fined £49 million for massive fraud against the US government after it was revealed they'd been systematically falsifying data in order to get bonus payments. And in this country, their failure to comply with statutory safety requirements led in 2020 to the death of one construction worker and serious injuries to another, according to a ruling by the Health and Safety Executive last year. But as well as being criminally unethical, they're also just not very good builders. On Trustpilot, they're rated bad with just 1.7 stars out of 5. And student residents have had to be moved out of their accommodation in Bethnal Green recently due to significant defects which have been blamed on the contractor and which have cost its owner over £34 million to address. Why is the council so keen to work with these incompetent criminals that it's prepared to set aside its usual tendering process and it seems guarantee the contract to Balfour Beatty without any tendering at all? And is its willingness to do so the reason why the company feels confident enough to hike its bill by over 35% from 10 to 14 million in just a few months? After all, the company do have form here. In 2016, one of their employees revealed how they'd been extorting the taxpayer by systematically inflating their costs. The company responded by sacking the whistleblower, for which they were later forced to pay £137,000. I'll end there, but if you'd like to be in touch about any of this or see any of the documentation I've referred to today, please do not hesitate to be in touch with Friends of Grampont Nature Park at gmptrees@gmail.com. More information on our website, savegmp.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glazebrook. I believe Councillor Hollingsworth has got a response for you.
Thank you very much. There were a number of inaccuracies in that. I hope I will cover at least some of them. This bridge has long been part of the policy and placemaking proposals for the West End, all of which have been consulted on widely and at length, debated in this full council and then adopted as formal documents. The West End Area Action Plan adopted by the City Council in June 2008 sought, and I quote, a new pedestrian and cycle bridge across the Thames to join Oxpens Field to the Thames towpath is proposed. This would link the West End to Oseley Mead and the West Oxford cycle route. Improvements will also be made to the route running east from the pedestrian bridge. The key document of the then local plan, it was called the Oxford Core Strategy, was adopted in March 2011. It made clear that it sought a new Thames cycle and pedestrian bridge in this area. Moving on to November 2013, the Oxpens SPD, that is a supplementary planning document, something which provides further detailed guidance to supplement existing policies within a local plan, was adopted by the City Council after consultation and democratic assessment. This explains in detail what is proposed and what the objectives are for the new bridge. To quote, a new bridge crossing the Thames, or ISIS, should be provided to enhance opportunities to move between Oxpens and the wider area, notably the Grampont Nature Reserve, and residential areas up and downstream on the opposite side of the river. Indicative locations for the proposed bridge crossing are illustrated on the development framework plan and illustrative master plan, those things in capitals. The exact location of the bridge is to be determined and the Environment Agency must be consulted on the design. There are maps in that document, the development framework plan and the illustrative master plan in the 2013 Oxpens SPD, and they include the proposed bridge in almost exactly the location for which planning permission was submitted and then approved. Moving on. The current Oxford Local Plan 2036 was adopted by Oxford City Council in June 2020. Policy SP2 says, the master plan for the Oxpens site should consider in greater detail how and when a pedestrian and cycle bridge will be delivered linking this site with the other side of the river. This is then expanded on in the current supplementary planning document, the West End and Oseley Mead SPD, adopted by Oxford City Council in November 2022. It says, the Oxpens River Bridge is one of the key infrastructure priorities in relation to movement, not flood prevention, movement for the site. The bridge that has been proposed, consulted on, and whose principle has been part of numerous formal policies adopted by this council for 20 years now, has planning permission and technical approval for the structure and a route have been identified to deliver the bridge. Grampont Nature Park will remain for the very most part entirely unaltered. The proposals will deliver biodiversity net gain and maintain the level of tree canopy cover in the area in accordance with national and local planning policies. The path through Grampont is already well used, and with further development in the West End, the level of use is forecast to increase. Work was done, as was suggested, to look at the options to floodproof the towpath under the rail bridge, but they have not yet been taken forward, as there is not yet funding available to achieve them. This does not mean that the route will not continue to be used for the rest of time, and the pathworks and proposed bridge will provide an attractive and legible route across the river to the city centre. The other bridges across the Thames will remain, and the potential to improve the Gasworks rail bridge, which is often cited, was considered by the County Council 2016-17 and was discounted as a workable option. Further review has highlighted considerable challenges, particularly with the footpath across Castle Millstream, which is too narrow to accommodate cycling, and the alternative route, which would be across the Castle Millstream Bridge and would require alterations to create a hardened path and altered levels across the protected meadow. The Council procured Balfour Beatty through the Local Authority Framework, known as SCAPE, to undertake pre-construction services as part of the preparation of the project and the planning process. The Local Authority Framework carries out vetting work on all contractors that it works with. The City Council will pursue a tendering process for a contractor for the construction of the bridge through another standard framework that includes, and will include for this, a competitive process. So what was said then was entirely untrue. The proposed bridge provides the opportunity for a new and convenient route across the river, designed specifically for the location and to support the placemaking that will support the development of the West End as a vibrant quarter of the city and connect to other parts of Oxford to the south and to the west of the city centre. And these were the objectives of the bridge first proposed and then adopted by this council 20 years ago.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hollingsworth. Right, so that concludes public addresses. So we're now on to motions. So we have 1 hour from now to discuss motions. First one, 17A, on the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. Can I call on Councillor Smoten to introduce it?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Before I begin, so don't start the clock just yet, I need to make a minor self-amendment to the motion, which is that in the paragraph mentioning Chris Hinchcliffe MP, to replace the words Labour MP with then Labour MP, as in then hyphen Labour MP, and to replace the words who pointed out with who pointed out in June this year, that being the then that we're talking about. The reason being that he was a member of the Labour Party, well, he was receiving the Labour whip when he made those statements in June. He subsequently lost the whip in July relating to a different rebellion. That one was about PIP and disability benefits, so far as I'm aware. With that amendment being made, self-amendment being made...
Accepted by yourself, I presume.
Yeah, I do accept my own amendment, yes.
And seconded by me.
And apparently Lawrence seconds it. I shall begin. Start the clock. Councillors, we have tabled this motion today to draw attention to two serious shortcomings of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which is currently going through Parliament and which is set to seriously harm our ability to locally govern development and to protect our natural environment. First of all, the bill prepares to remove yet more major applications from consideration by the Planning Committee and instead send them to delegated decision-making. I can quite understand why this could have been done if you had a planning committee that was making bad decisions. But the signs of that would be very clear. A planning committee that was making bad decisions would be routinely demolished at appeal or would be taken to judicial review. And this is just not happening with the Oxford Planning Committee. Why then is the Oxford Planning Committee subject to these kinds of measures? This opens a democratic deficit, as councillors will no longer be able to cross-check that the balance of planning considerations properly reflects the harms and benefits of development experienced by the public. The government's sidelining of elected members suggests to me that they don't think that councillors can be trusted to exercise power responsibly, and it is utterly contrary to their manifesto pledge to transfer power to communities. Secondly, the bill would replace much on-site contribution to nature and biodiversity with money paid towards notional compensation elsewhere. This is the money that the RSPB described as cash to trash. There is a real problem that needs to be solved here. We have all seen sites where trees get planted or swift boxes are nailed to eaves, but the developer isn't invested in seeing them survive and thrive, so they die and decay, having ticked a box but not served any real purpose. So that is not to say that off-site contribution can sometimes be the right way forwards. But is the solution really an unaccountable national body that gets to decide how and where this money gets used? Stop me if you've heard this one before, but where is the local control? Where is the local oversight? Shouldn't local people and local representatives be the ones to call the shots as to what should be done and where so as to benefit nature and compensate people for lost green space? Instead, Natural England will decide the scope and draw up the plans, and we will have to hope that the present government, or hopefully the next one, is sympathetic to local opinion. Councillors, I urge you to back localism and to back local power wielded carefully and responsibly, self-determination for our communities, over an authoritarian bill that strips power from elected representatives. Please support the motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Farwell, do you want to speak now or reserve your right to speak at the end of the discussion?
I'll speak at the end, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Right, okay, I've got Hollingsworth and Clarkson. Councillor Hollingsworth.
I'm going to declare a slight interest. It's not one that prevents me from taking part in this, but since I am actually a lecturer on town planning, this feels like one of my classes now, and is interesting as a result. Thank you for bringing forward thoughts here. All I'm going to say is that when this motion was first written and submitted, the bill was at that point a bill. Since then, it has moved on very, very substantially and is a bill in progress, but has, I cannot follow how many amendments there are on it, but there are an awful lot. So I appreciate there may be some headliney things, but I think it's trying to nail a flag to a very, very moving flag post at this precise point. So picking up those precise issues, there is, so Oxford's planning committee will not necessarily be impacted in any shape or form because the actual words that are in the legislation are very clear. There are powers which are transferred to a Secretary of State, and that may be regarded as a good thing or a bad thing, and I'll leave it up to you in your summary to pick that up. But it doesn't specify anywhere, it didn't specify in the guidance in 2024 when it was initially published how many members of the committee should be, and it is unclear as to precisely what might be allowed to go to a committee and might not. I strongly suspect whatever is in the legislation at the moment will also change as you move on. That is the nature of legislation, and almost invariably it will be down to some secondary legislation because that is what all governments and all parliament seems to do and have done for some considerable time. So I don't think there is any clear direct impact, and I've waded through the many, many amended versions of Clause 51 or whatever it is, which includes amendments down to when it's 39XXX4 or something, the amended slot that's going in. And on the other issue, there is currently a whole series of debates about the natural environmental issues where the government has acknowledged that it needs to change it, and they are currently being changed in the House of Lords. So I'm not quite sure what more we could contribute until we know what it is they have or have not changed.
Thank you. Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you. What Councillor Hollings has said leads quite neatly into what I was going to say in terms of the fact that we are dealing with a moving picture here. Let's just remind ourselves the UK is the most nature depleted country in Europe. We have a lot of existing environmental protections in law, yet they have neither enabled nature recovery nor have they been able to encourage sustainable house building. So the status quo has not worked, and I don't think there's any reason to think that it will work in future. So we need to move away from a site and a species-specific approach to one which no longer pits environmental protection as a barrier against growth. And also, again, back to what Alex was saying about the fact that this is still ongoing. It's worth bearing in mind that the Office for Environmental Protection is broadly happy with the amendments which have been made so far. And obviously, the Nature Restoration Fund needs, and the way it will operate, needs further scrutiny and development. But I do think that this is the right move, and it's going to be a better deal both for nature and for people.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I'll get used to it eventually. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Recently at Labour Party conference, I was speaking at a fringe meeting on the barriers to growth and to planning and so on, with quite a distinguished panel aside from myself. And I think one of the very clear things that came out of that panel was a general agreement that the one thing that our current system was not doing, just to kind of like re-emphasise the point that Councillor Clarkson has just made, was delivering the environmental protections in the way that we would want them to do, and is not delivering the housing and the sustainable growth that we would want it to be doing. So I frankly welcome anything that sort of starts again, has a look at those proposals, tries to make sure that we're not spending huge sums of money producing documents rather than actual improvements to land and to housing and to our environment. And that is what is happening at the moment. Developers have to go through such ridiculous hoops in terms of just producing endless documentation. And at the end of the day, it's not necessarily producing anything in terms of real environmental improvements. So I do think there's plenty of scope for this bill to get it right, to try and make sure that we can protect our environment, we can protect greater biodiversity, we can create sustainable development, and that we will be able to build houses quicker and more cheaply, because that is important. Apart from anything else, if we want affordable housing, and in this council I hope we all want affordable housing, you need to make sure that you're keeping the costs of development down in order to try and make sure that you can get as much affordable housing as possible. That is the way the system works. So I welcome the bill. I don't support the motion, and I personally hope that other people in this chamber will also support the great need for housing and the efforts this bill is making to try and make that easier for people.
Thank you. Anybody else before I move to Councillor Fairweather? Oh, yeah, Councillor Smith. Oh.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I think I should do. I too definitely support that we need more housing in this country. We need affordable, we need housing that is energy efficient and nature-friendly homes as well too. But I think it's been wrong in the past, and still is, that we blame the lack of building and so forth on Natural England objecting to applications and so forth. I'm just looking it up because I had heard him speak on this. This is the chair of Natural England, Tony Juniper, explains. We think ministers are barking up the wrong tree when they blame slow house building on bats and newts. Out of the tens of thousands of planning applications that we consulted on each year, 99% result in Natural England and developers finding ways for developments to proceed while protecting nature. A mere 1% result in an objection. So I think it is important that we keep that in mind. People like the Wildlife Trusts are objecting and wanting, I think it's called phase 3 or part 3 of the bill to be removed. Part 3, thank you for that. Yeah, part 3, yeah, thank you. Wrong P, thank you. Sir, as you said, you felt back in the closed room. Thank you for that correction. So I do think we should be supporting this, and those who are objecting to that part of the bill. I think ministers do need to rethink on it. I'm pleased to hear that there are going to be more changes, and I'm looking forward to the Lords putting forward, I think it's this month in fact actually, some changes to the bill that may make it more palatable for us all.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So I'll just touch on the first part of the motion. I think the reason that our planning committee doesn't suffer is because our officers do a really good job, and we need to trust the professionals to do the job. And I think anything that helps speed up the process is really important. And at the moment, we do get a long backlog of applications that are subject to small things, really great details that actually the professionals need to deal with them, and they can deal with them. And I think the gist of this bill is the fact that we want to speed up. Nobody is trying to bypass or circumvent anything in that sense. And also, as Councillor Smith just said, or touching on 99% are approved anyway, that just shows that actually the professionals, the planning officers and the planning department are doing their job. But because there's so many hoops that they have to go through, that application is delayed for so many, potentially years. I think I've been on the planning committee for probably about 4 years now, 5 years, and I've seen applications that have taken months and months over some really, in hindsight, probably trivial things that could have been sorted. So if there's a more professional, streamlined process, which I think what's behind this bill, it will really help our housing crisis in Oxford especially, and in the country as a whole. So I'd oppose, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Radelson.
Yeah, so I find this motion as sort of an odd and fairly unforgivable defence of the status quo. So, you know, the current schemes of environmental protection, you know, as Mary and my other colleagues have said, have clearly not worked for either nature nor building anything in the UK at any pace. And the time is right to try and do something else. I sort of hate to bang on about bat tunnels, but if we were going to spend £120 million on protecting bats in the UK, we would not be putting a tunnel over a short bit of track in Buckinghamshire. And I think most, you know, pretty much everyone here would agree with that. As Mary has also said, she basically stole my speech without saying it. We are most nature-depleted country in Europe. We can blame the Vikings and the Romans for some of that, for removing so many trees. But, you know, we do live in a country where we intensively farm half of our national parks and set fire to the other half for food for grouse. And lots of people sadly think that's what nature and biodiversity looks like. So we do have quite a long way to go. We also have quite frankly, a chronic housing crisis in this country that is strangling the future of the next generation. And quite frankly, we owe it to our children to try and sort that out, change some legislation, and to not accept the status quo. So yeah, current nature protections around planning or otherwise have not delivered. It's time to do something else. Getting local authorities at whatever level to manage the fund over Natural England, I would support, but I will not be voting for this motion.
Thank you. Anyone else before we go to the seconder? Oh, sorry. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I spoke recently with a resident who was extremely frustrated at being made to pay for a bat survey for re-roofing her house in a way that made it more energy efficient. I explained to her that she shouldn't be frustrated at planning officers. They are doing their job. They are applying the law. The law is too much at present of a box-ticking exercise. Looking at nature protection in those little projects where there were no bats had ever been seen in the area. There was no reason to suspect that any bats would be seen in the area or would be affected, while not directing our attention and our funding to restoring and rewilding and protecting the nature that we have. I suspect that if done right, and I accept it has to be done right, and the scrutiny being given to the bill by the Lords is, I am sure, welcome. A nature restoration levy would not be cash to trash, but cash to stop us trashing the protected areas that we do have, and all the areas that should be protected and that are, although ostensibly reserved for nature, are not being looked after because nobody concentrates on them. I think the bill, if done right, could reprioritise our planning system towards both building houses and enhancing nature.
Thank you. Councillor Muddiman.
Thank you. I just wanted to refute the inferred suggestion that anyone who voted for this policy, for this motion, is in some way against affordable housing, because that's obviously not true. I think everyone in the House, everyone in this room, as somebody opposite said, is very much in favour of affordable housing. And for my part, the biggest issue for affordable housing in our city is the administration's desire to continually put employment sites over and above housing sites. And that's a much bigger issue than the planning system. So I will be voting for this motion.
Councillor Jafari Marbini.
It was quite interesting that Councillor Hollingsworth made the argument that the bill is kind of in a state of flux. So surely now is the time to act and make the council's wishes known, not wait till the bill is completed and then make the council's wishes known to the national government. And also then Councillor Brown implied that actually the Labour group do really like the bill, but obviously it sounds like we don't really know what the bill is going to look like because it's being amended a lot. So I'm not really clear what the position was there from the Labour bench, and I totally agree. I too am really for affordable housing, but surely that's a lot of it is to do with the viability criteria for all building, which really is not allowing us to have as much social housing in the city because of the viability calculations. That means the developers get an awful lot of profit. Isn't that the biggest issue with house building?
Okay. Councillor Turner.
Sorry, yeah, thanks, Lord Mayor. I wasn't intending to join in this one, but there are a couple of recent contributions that made me think I would. I mean, on the discussion about our local plan going forward, I mean, my understanding actually was that there's a presumption running through it around employment sites. Actually, they can be used for housing. That was my understanding the last time I looked. And we've also, of course, got some housing sites. Now, you know, I understand feelings run really high on this issue, and I'm not someone that accepts the choices, that claims the choices aren't easy. I am someone that sticks his neck out on it, Lord Mayor. You know, there's a development proposed in Iffley Village. Last time I was up for election, people hung up pictures, you know, saying don't vote for this man, he's trashing Iffley and all the rest of it. But the argument that I make to people there is that when I talk to families that are in desperate housing need, you know, when I talk to, you know, the families of kids in, you know, my kids' class at school, they're the kids sleeping, you know, next to a fridge, can't sleep properly, can't do their homework. And I take it up with allocations, and the process has been followed, and we try to help people. Or when I have those conversations with people in temporary accommodation, or maybe even, you know, emergency accommodation in a hotel, I say I will try and do something to get more housing built. And the problem which I find is that people are okay with that in the abstract, and we've heard a couple of points about it in the abstract tonight. But, you know, I hope the councillors that just spoke will be okay coming down Iffley Village with me and supporting, you know, sometimes some of those hard issues when you come under pressure. Because I find people are very good at the theoretical support, and when it comes to the practical support, then they end up backing off, and that's rather a shame. And just on the viability point, I mean, there's a lot of sensible work done on barriers to affordable housing delivery. And I'm not one of those people that says that it's all, I think, you know, sometimes people say planning is the problem too often, you know, and I say that, you know, in a spirit of criticism of the current government as well, right? Sometimes I think there are market issues, competition issues, sometimes there'll be viability, but we can't. Equally, when you look at serious work, and I'll share some of the shelter reports with councillors if they're interested, it's not just all about developers making excessive profit and going on viability. There's a whole dysfunctional system here. Some of the issues in this bill will address some of it, but it's by no means all of it. And then lastly, a chunk of it as well is about the commitment to public support for house building and investment. And that's something which is happening now, which went into abeyance rather in recent years, and which I really, really welcome.
I'll take Councillor Malik and then Ottino.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will be voting for this motion. I don't take this kind of emotional blackmail. You know, we have a long waiting list in the city, so therefore, we have to go and invade every single playground in our city, in our local plan, because 5,500 people are waiting on the list. Well, world become economic, have become basically a global village. People on the move. We're lucky to have a family members. Population is growing around the world, and city boundary remains the same. I mean, bring on the devolution and let's see where we go. And equally, even when the devolution comes in, Greater Oxford will try to invade the other green spaces instead of going along. So when we eventually run out of, there is a $1 million question, all these green spaces, I mean, tomorrow the administration can turn up in a local plan, well, South Park is too big, why don't we have a chunk there? Because there is 5,000-6,000 families are waiting, and they're coming along. I mean, we can go and invest taxpayers' money during COVID in Broad Street Meadow, and then our companies can outbid the developer to buy the Iffley Meadow to build on it. Oh, we need housing. I mean, where is the balance?
If you are either like the greenery or you like the biodiversity or you're out there to kill it. You can't have both ways. You have to make yourself clear on the policy. So just listening to this, oh yeah, the people are waiting because this is why we have to bring this play area in and this stuff in, that's not good enough, because you get in the local plan, you make a policy, developer going to get their way, and we lose that green space forever. So therefore, please do vote for this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Tino.
Yeah, okay, I don't have any expertise in planning, but what I do is I go out and talk to the residents of Northfield Brook regularly, and pretty much every time I go out, I have a really moving conversation with people living in overcrowding, in a 2-bedroom flat with many children, families that moved into 3-bedroom accommodation when they had kids, and now they've got 2 30-year-olds living at home, and they've absolutely no chance of ever being able to get the money for a mortgage or get onto a housing register. I meet people with a safer third thing. So we absolutely need to build more housing, absolutely need to do, and that's the most important thing that this council can contribute to. I am prepared, I know nothing in detail about this bill, but I am prepared to sacrifice the rights of people to complain and object to some of those rights to get more housing built, because I'm fed up, and it's too emotional meeting these people over and over again, and all I can say is go on the housing register knowing that they'll get nowhere. So I am prepared to make those sacrifices, and there are too many people that say they support housing, but not here, 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 or here. And there's always a reason why people don't want it near them. And it is disruptive when you have building work around you. But I don't want to live in a society where people haven't got secure housing.
Councillor Miles.
Thank you. So I'm just concerned that this has become a debate, as I think has already been mentioned, between whether we support nature or whether we support housing, because I don't think that is really what this is about. You can have both, and there are many good examples in other countries where they have successfully managed to increase the density of population. I lived in the Netherlands, and in Amsterdam you can have much denser housing than we've got here, whilst also maintaining that close proximity to nature. But what I wanted to specifically speak to is this point about us calling today in this motion for a strong presumption towards environmental mitigation on site or close by in preference to levy payment. And I have first-hand experience working in India, where I've seen the negative impacts of the carbon offsetting, where there's huge corruption, where that has happened, where people have thought that they're paying to offset their carbon emissions, and that money has not been spent for the intended projects. And so what really worries me about a nature restoration levy is that it's open to abuse. And, you know, we've heard the term dysfunctional from the other side of this room, but it could be dysfunctional. It may not work. And actually, people need nature on their doorstep just as much as they need housing. It's not one or the other. They can have both. They do have both in many places where they don't have the housing issues that we have in this city, which has been, I think, socially constructed through very long policies where you've prioritised office space over you know, creating accommodation for people who need it. Thank you.
Councillor Rawle.
Thank you. I just wanted to draw attention to a headline that came out just a month ago. England to sell 8 times more council homes than it built last year. That's not because we need to cut red tape for developers. It's because we have a buy-to-let scheme that isn't working. So we need to change the whole system in order to solve this housing crisis if we're looking at a need for one-bed homes that we keep hearing about in housing committee.
Thank you. Councillor Mundy.
Thank you. I think there's a remarkable lack of trust from the Labour side in the council's capability to make decisions about its own planning using the structures we have in place. Surely we should believe in our own capacity and knowledge, and those of those on the planning committee, to actually make quality decisions that do encourage quality housing and housing in appropriate locations where people are going to be able to live, and where we can encourage the building of council housing and acquiring properties for the housing revenue account, as we heard earlier in the meeting. So, you know, why we would want to lose the agency of this council in making those decisions is beyond me, really. You know, we should be having faith in the fact that we can make those decisions ourselves and not be wishing for national government to impose upon us more than they do already. And also, in light of the fact, obviously, someone brought up earlier about the Greater Oxford plan, we should be confidently stating that we're ready to be making these decisions, not willfully welcoming the government intruding more in our own capability to make these decisions ourselves, and in course being in close contact with the residents of our city. We talk about knocking on the doors, talking to people on the doorstep. You really want to talk to someone at the doorstep and say, yeah, actually, I really want the government to be putting its nose in more in our planning decisions. I don't think that's what people actually want. They want us to make quality decisions for them, and I think that's what we're here to do.
Lord Mayor, on grounds that on grounds that I think motion B addresses a very important topic, and I think we should devote time to it. May I move to proceed to summing up?
I've only got 2 more speakers left, and then we'll be going to you two. So please be quick, and we'll have plenty of time for the other motion.
I won't be supporting the motion. One of the reasons why I'm quite in favour of the government's proposals is the flexibility it gives you to acquire funds from developers to improve nature in a more flexible way than we currently have. I can think of cases in this city where we are held back, frankly, and thwarted by the need to find sites that are adjacent or very close to the sites where we wish to develop. And that's actually very difficult sometimes in this city, and is frankly holding us up in bringing forward affordable housing proposals that I think many people in this chamber would want to support. The second thing I would say, absolutely reinforcing what Councillor Tina said, it's coincidental today that I spent time this morning with 2 families who are facing eviction under Section 21. It's not just the issue of overcrowding, it's the mental health issues that emanate from this. Very serious mental health issues where people are having to take medication in order to deal with the strain in their families of not having sufficient housing to live in. That's the big story here. That's what really matters. And therefore the weighting of the debate around risk and choice needs to be leaning heavily towards the building of affordable social housing in this city and sweeping away, frankly, impediments to it. Because the burden that these families are facing at the moment is too much. It's not fair, it's inappropriate, and that's why I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
I'm sure I wasn't the only councillor here who was watching the Oxford United planning decision that was made last month. I was watching that with a group of Oxford United fans, and they were watching a 3-4 hour council meeting, crossing their fingers, hoping the council would make the right decision. It was a choice between making the right decision or the wrong decision. And I don't believe that council planning committees should have the power to make the wrong decision. I don't understand the argument from Councillor Mundy that we should put the faith in councils to make the right decision when we can just simply have the right decision made and not go through the whole faff. I have residents on.
Let's just go home then.
I have a resident on Upway Road. I have a resident on Upway Road who's about to be evicted from his home and has been applying for council houses over and over again and is not going to get one until he becomes homeless. I was canvassing Planman's Tower the other day and I talked to 3 different families who are in overcrowded flats who can't get better council houses, who can't get bigger council houses. I agree with Councillor Rule that the whole planning, planning system needs an overhaul, so I don't understand why we should oppose the first step, because this is the first step. I mean, the government has talked about bringing further potential planning reforms after this one, and I don't understand why we should say no at the first step of what the planning reforms will be.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Fairweather, would you like to do your seconding now?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Despite the administration attempting to divert attention onto affordable housing and viability issues, I'd like to remind Council that this motion seeks to ensure that the Council's dissatisfaction with the Planning and Infrastructure Bill is brought to the attention of MPs. It's remarkable that in parallel with local government reorganisation, which is supposed to devolve more decision-making to unitary local authorities, this bill is progressing through Parliament. It seeks to take powers away from local communities. Taking decisions out of councillors' hands is taking decisions out of the hands of local people. Removing people and their councillors from the system does not mean faster planning, it means less democratic planning. We're already the most centrally governed country in Europe. Local government knows very much more about their community than a central planning organisation could ever know. The evidence is clear. Councils already approve more than 85 to 90% of planning applications. Councillors are not blocking development, they're facilitating it. And they're doing so with local insight and consent, the very things that make planning sustainable and defensible. The evidence to show what happens when there's insufficient investment in environmental enforcement capacity in planning authorities is clear. A recent report studied 42 developments with over 6,000 homes. It showed that only half of the environmental conditions have been implemented by developers. Indeed, it would seem that Oxford North is a local example. It would appear that there is, as yet, no trace of the environmental mitigation promised in Cutslow Park, but the development is now officially open. Do we think this bill will improve this? The answer has to be that it will shut people out and silence local councillors and local voices. Please vote in favour of this motion.
Thanks. And finally, Councillor Smoten to summarise the response.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Right, quite a lot to get through here. Councillor Hollingsworth talks about the soup of amendments that are currently going around. Well, quite. Now is the time to intervene. If we wait until that soup of amendments has congealed, then it will be much, much harder to intervene at a later point than to make our voices heard now. Now is the time to speak. He also talks about the powers to remove applications from committees. This is rather a blank check. It could say, for example, that you can remove applications from planning committees when they have shown themselves to be making poor decisions, when they have been knocked over at appeal repeatedly, or something of that kind. But it doesn't. It just gives a blank check to the minister. Councillor Clarkson talks about the status quo and problems with the status quo. Quite right, there are problems with the status quo. Nobody likes it when a developer is forced to deliver some BNG on site, so they sort of throw it over their shoulder and it's done no good. Nobody is saying that the status quo is exactly right, but the choice is not between the bill and the status quo, the choice is between the bill, the status quo, and a better bill. Councillor Brown talks about how she wants to get housing built. Well, quite right. But who should be the people deciding what's the best way to benefit nature when the building damages nature in some way? Should it be a body out of DEFRA, or should it be this council? I would suggest it should be this council. I know, by the way, there's been reporting this weekend that was talking about de-amending the bill, so any conciliations that come away from amendments should be subject to that. Now, I know almost everybody's talking about, in the environmental aspect of things, very little about planning committees, with two notable exceptions. I was surprised to hear Councillor Rahman advocating taking things away from the planning committee. I would want to know why. The Oxford City Planning Committee appears to be really good at its job. It seems to deliver cast iron decisions, one after another after another. If it isn't, where are the JRs? Where are the appeals? They're not happening because they're good decisions coming out of the committee. So why do we want to take the applications away? I would suggest it's doing well. Let it continue. And finally, Councillor Taylor doesn't want to give planning committees the opportunity to make wrong decisions. Where is your source of truth? Where are you finding out which ones are the wrong decisions? Because planning is not arithmetic. Like, if the question was what is 2 + 2, then fair enough. No planning committee can say that it's 5. but it's not. Planning law is administering balancing tests, and those balancing tests have to be informed by the facts on the ground, and they have to be informed by people who understand the local neighbourhood. That is not national government, that's local councillors. That's why you should keep those powers where they are. Please support the motion.
Right, thank you very much for those many, many different contributions. So we will now take a vote on this motion. Can I see all those in favour of this motion? Okay. Happy? Can I see all of those against this motion? Are there any abstentions? None. So, what's the number? Okay, thank you. So that motion... Thank you. Sorry, so that motion was defeated. Sorry, I just thought it was 24 and 22 against. 20 votes for it and 22 votes against. So it has fallen. Okay. I think there's been a bit of... Let's just do it again, because I think it may have been a tie. Okay.
Take the vote again.
All right. So, there's been... All right. Please, can I see all those in favour of the motion? 4, 6... 22. All right, so that's 22 in favour. Can I see all those against the motion? $22. How exciting! I get to use my casting vote. Fantastic. Right. Well, my casting vote is going to be against the motion, I'm afraid. So the motion has fallen. Right. Wow. Never thought I was going to get the chance to do that. Okay, so let's move on to the second motion, which Councillor Smoten has already said is a very important one for us to debate. So I call on Councillor Powell to introduce the motion.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Colleagues, obviously the motion today is of particular importance and is something that I think we can all agree affects many of our constituents and residents around this city. When I speak to residents around this city, many residents, particularly those from global ethnic majority communities, from Muslim families, are living in fear as a result of the racist discourses that have permeated our society. What this motion does, in simple terms, is affirm a series of things this council has already signed up to, and then articulate through those things some of the commitments and actions that we might take to usefully represent our residents and make representations to national government about what they can best do to try and address the spread of toxic far-right narratives in our society. I think it's really important here to address a couple of tenets that come out in national politics that greatly exacerbate the issues we face. The first, relates to one of the items in Council Resolves. In our Council Resolves, one of the things we are going to ask to do if we pass this motion is ask for representations to be made and oppositions to be made against the decision to end the right to family reunification. That sort of policy, that idea of ending the right to family reunification, is premised on one of the most poisonous tendencies in British politics. That is the false narrative, which you might call the pull factor thesis, the idea that people who come to the UK irregularly come on the basis of conditions of reception. The Home Office's own statistics show that this is pretty much irrelevant to the reasons why people come. The reasons why people come to seek asylum and refugee status in the UK relate far more to familial ties, shared language, and other factors that reflect this country's history of colonialism. So when the government proposes to undertake those kinds of policies, they don't do anything to address problems like people risking their lives crossing the Channel, which we all agree is a problem that needs to be addressed. But that policies such as ending family reunification will do nothing to address this. What they do instead is cement an idea in the public that this is a national emergency, particularly when the Prime Minister chooses to use language like referring to this country as an island of strangers. These narratives give residents, communities, an idea that migrants are to blame for the deprivations they are suffering in their day-to-day lives. We all know that migrants are not to blame for these things. The blame instead lies with economic decisions made by consecutive governments at this stage to not put priority on community services, to not put the money into our NHS, to not ensure that there is a available stock of fair-priced housing. And I think linking to the last motion, we all agree in this chamber on the importance of ensuring that there is good, affordable housing. I was happy to see, for example, some of the appropriations we made earlier, prioritising social rent, prioritising affordable housing. Those are the things that government should be focusing on if they want to address the poison seeping for our communities, not playing lowest common denominator politics, invoking hatred and spreading false narratives about the causes of the problem this country faces. We've seen the consequences of these narratives all too viscerally in recent days with attacks in Manchester and Peacehaven. We also know that our own Oxford Central Mosque was the victim of a horrific racist incident just a few weeks ago. I think it's really important here that as representatives of a city which, and I remember the now Deputy Lord Mayor saying in his first address as Lord Mayor, and in fact in my first time in this chamber, talking about Oxford as perhaps the UK's smallest, truly global city. We are all representing global communities in this city, and I think it would be the most powerful thing if we choose to use our voice tonight to stand up for those communities, to say enough is enough. The hatred perpetuated by government and by far-right racists on our streets needs to end. Let's stand up for our communities and let's pass this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, do you want to second the motion now or speak at the end?
I'll speak at the end, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. So just everybody, please bear in mind we've got a little under 15 minutes, so make it snappy, please. Okay, who would like to speak? We'll start with Councillor Tino.
Okay, I absolutely support this motion. What we have seen recently is the whipping up of hatred towards and the demonisation of minorities by super rich people like Elon Musk. We've seen this strategy before through history. It seeks to turn ordinary working person against another ordinary working person, blaming each other for our problems, lack of housing, longer waits at the doctors, when actually the real reason we have those problems is the inequalities in our society, where we have a small number of people with so much wealth and most of us with very little else. It's up to all of us, not just as a council, but as individuals, to come out and challenge these false narratives and to physically show we stand alongside minority groups and replace those narratives with the true narratives of how both our society is enriched by immigration and how in our time of need, when we were threatened by an invasion of a far-right government from Germany in World War II, it was people from all over the world, from Asia, Africa, Americas, Australasia, they came to fight for us to defend our shores. And so therefore, in their time of need, when they're seeking sanctuary, is our obligation to hold out our hand to welcome them.
Thank you. Can we move straight to Councillor Miles?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just keep this brief, but You know, 35% of the people in our city were born outside of the UK, according to the last census. And interestingly, if you compare that to the UK overall, elsewhere it was only 16%. So we're really much more diverse than other cities. And I think we need to recognise the contribution that migrants are making to our city, whether that's education, science, technology or healthcare, as nurses, cleaners, teachers, doctors, surgeons, researchers, or even working in our own council administration. So we need to stand up for them who are contributing to our city's economy and society and the culture of our great city. And I really want us to reiterate our council's commitment to support people from all diverse communities. I also want to say that I'm from German heritage. Part of my family, you know, they came together after the war. So some of my family are German, some of them are British. And so it's really my responsibility to remind everyone about the recent past of what happened in the Second World War and during that Nazi era. And I know that people are feeling threatened and intimidated. We've heard about concerns from our Muslim communities and other different faith groups, but I want to also call out the concerns raised to me by members of the Jewish community in my ward and in the wider city, because there are people who've been born and bred here who are Jewish who feel they don't belong here anymore because of the threats that they're facing, and I think really this is unacceptable. So another point that I want to raise is linking to some of the words that Alex mentioned around wider policy interventions that we can be doing to address this. The national government has cut international development spending, and some of the factors that are, are driving people away from and to our country, they're looking for safety here, and we need to invest more in international development to address the conflicts that are happening in other countries, rather than spending just on defence. And so that, I think, is something that we should be looking at. But I will be supporting today the motion before us. So thank you for putting it forward.
So, okay, can we go straight to Councillor Hollingsworth? Please keep it brief.
Yes, I will be brief. Entirely support this motion and its resolutions in particular. I support also what Councillor Miles just said. The bit that I also want to say is what you don't include as a proposal, where the temptation is to do that, which is to have some control on free speech as a way of controlling. That's not how this city dealt with Oswald Mosley when he spoke just over there in May 1936. It was trade unionists, it was communists, it was Labour people, Liberals, people from any different background, and none who stood up to fascists in our city and drove them out. And when I found myself, and I hope for the only time, agreeing with something Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, say when he said Trump's proposal to do media control over what people say in the media, in public, and that is fundamentally wrong. I completely agree with that. And I think in the context of what I feel is being said about police activity in this country really concerns me, because I think Ted Cruz might be right, and I don't ever want to have to say that again.
Thank you. Councillor Stairs.
Immigration has been part of the backbone of this country, and we are the better for it. But how many of us would go home tonight and leave our front door open for anyone to come in? I suggest no one would be that reckless. We would be wise enough to recognise the unknown but very real danger to ourselves and our families. We know that there are many very good and honest people of all cultures and origins amongst us, but we also know that there can be threats of danger. Our community has elected us to represent their interests, and as we understand our need to protect our homes and our families, it is our responsibility to protect our communities. I'm not suggesting that we should be blind to the needs of others, but let us not be blinded by virtue signalling that ignores and negates potential risks. Inasmuch as we would not leave ourselves and our families vulnerable to unknown dangers, I believe our priority is to safeguard our community. You ask for fairer and more welcoming Oxford to those we know nothing about, whilst at the same time you support and promote unfair and discriminatory restrictions to be placed on our own residents. This motion really is virtual signalling at its best, all whilst completely ignoring and disregarding the reality of what could be negative impacts on the Oxford citizens.
Thank you. I've just got time to take one more before we go for the seconder, and it was Joe was the Councillor Sanderson was the next one I saw. Sorry.
Yes, I support this. I support this motion completely. Thank you. I forget the name of the councillor who just spoken. To suggest that nobody... What? I can't hear. To suggest that none of us would leave our back doors open when we go to bed, I would suggest that's dog whistle politics. It's suggesting that none of us feel safe in our own country. And there are many of us in this room who have either come from overseas, whose parents have come from overseas, and grandparents, and have suffered in pogroms and terror attacks, and have come from exile to the sanctuary of this country, in particularly this wonderful city. So let's call ourselves a safe place to be, and I would challenge you to spend, both of us, the night with our back door open and see if anybody comes in at all. I would, and if they do, the chances are that it will be a fox. I would like to quote from Jazra Corsby, who's a London doctor, originally from Gaza, and he spoke at a Standing Together rally yesterday. First of all, before I quote him, I would say I would like to express my sadness at the Peacehaven Mosque arson attacks. There's no room for intolerance anywhere. What he says is there's a depressing rise in anti-Semitism here in Britain and across Europe. The recent attack on Jewish worshippers in a synagogue in Manchester is the latest example. I extend my sympathy and condolences to the victims' families. Some say this rise of anti-Semitism is a natural response to Israel's atrocities. We Palestinians reject any conflation between Israel's actions and Jewish communities here. I would like to say that on Yom Kippur, where I stood in security in the second line inside with only a prayer book. Luckily, it was 3.5 centimeters thick and hardback, so maybe that would have prevented any attack from someone who like the person in Manchester. I'm sorry, can I just finish, please? In both the Orthodox and the Progressive services that day, prayers were said for all those Israelis and Palestinians suffering who've been killed in the region. And so it's important for us all to understand that for minority groups, like my own minority as a Jewish person, we feel increasingly fearful because of not only what's happened, but the tsunami of hate speech that's now coursing through social media, and that's not just for Jewish people,
Sanderson, we need to stop now.
Muslims, everybody who is in a minority.
Thank you.
So I support this motion.
So in order for us to have time to vote, could we have a very quick seconding and summing up, please?
Lord Mayor, can I move to suspend standing orders? I think there's plenty of people who still want to speak, and there's been quite some significant comments made which I think need addressing.
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Would you have somebody seconding and extending standing orders? We have... Okay, I think I have at least 3 more people who want to speak. 4, 5, 6, and that is it, okay? So that's, so that's going to be an extra 20 minutes on standing order and time to stand up. So we're going to be looking at 9 o'clock. All right, can I see all those in favour of suspending standing orders until 9 o'clock? I think that's a majority. Okay. Right, then I can carry on making my list. Okay, I've got Raymond, Malik, Jafari Marbini, then everyone else put your hands up. Thank you, and I will... So we'll start with Councillor Raymond, but keep your hands up. Off you go, Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, thank you. First of all, Joe, you're not by yourself here, we're all with you, so there's nothing to worry about on that front. We're all one. I think Councillor Miles spoke about the International Development Fund. I'm glad to say that our MP resigned over that matter. So I do criticise when there's criticism, when there's support, I'll support it. But what I will say to the benches on the left of me today is that you have to go with what you believe in and what your moral stance says. At the moment, the government or the leadership of this government are pandering to the right wing. Okay, they're moving faster than anybody could imagine, and people in that party, part of the process, need to stand up, because if you don't stand up, it's just going to get worse and worse. And at the moment, the leadership is moving so fast that I can't actually see the difference between Farage and Starmer in 2 years' time. I just can't see it. And the way that the rate that they're going, 5 years, it goes to 10 years to get to become a national in this country. It's not. And you know what? The most important thing, I agree totally with this motion. The only thing that I will say is what's behind this. So at the moment, no matter where you are, whatever side of the Palestinian conflict that you do have sympathy as a human towards people from Gaza. Okay, but next year, when they're homeless and they manage to find a route through thick or thin to get to this country, lots of people are going to start hating them. Okay, they're going to say, why they come here? We're going to get the same thing. Where have these people turned up from? Why are they coming here? How can we help them? So we need to step back and say, right, what are we doing? Our government is supporting the Israeli genocide there at the moment. It might not be through funding, but it's through parts, it's through reconnaissance, aircraft missions and everything. We need to stop that so we don't have refugee problems in this country, because if we want to be a power in the world, or we pretend to be, or we think we are, then actually we need to go out there, put our front foot forward and say, no, we don't agree with this, not tacitly support our allies no matter what they do. We need to be strong there, not strong on the people that come here who are already suffering, so they're making their way here because they're suffering. Yes, when the time's difficult now, our communities, they suffer, they feel a bit threatened when they can't have housing. But you know what? It's a culmination of me first. And at the moment, we need to stand up and say, you know what? We live in a global world now, like Councillor Malik said earlier on. We live in a global world. We can't just be isolationist and say, oh, not for me or not here. We need to stand forward. And I urge you all, really, because you have the means to stop or affect change within the government at the moment, and hopefully we can stop this far-right procession towards making our country unwelcome to refugees and anybody that looks like a minority.
Thank you. Councillor Malik.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Powell and the other to bring this motion to the Council. And also I'd like to thank Chris Jarvis and the others turning up all these anti-racism demonstration and everything, and the ex-Green Councillor is very good. You guys turn up and you make your voice heard and you support these things. I think hatred have no place in this beautiful city. I'm very lucky to live 35 years in a wonderful city. And you know what? One thing is, we all sit here, we have a very different political policy differences, but when it comes to humanity and against the hatred, it's nice to see we're all united. So this is what makes me Oxfordian. This is why I choose to live in this city. And I'm very proud the city who represent the diversity from all over. You know, on the funny side, sometimes I say to my colleague, you know, Wanda, obviously I'm not in a position to call and run any scheme, but people who are against the migrant, if one day, if we can say, apart from the emergency services workers, can we just sit home and do nothing, and let's see how the services go. See how the NHS will operate. See how the people get A to B, even the taxi drivers, the bus drivers. So the people, I mean, world is a global village, but unfortunately, the way rest of the European politics gone, the fear has come along. If you really talk about on the principal matter, successive government have gone to sell their arm and ammunition and invaded and attacked the other countries, and people making it homeless. And then we're crying, oh, why these people are coming here? No disrespect, well, British Empire went everywhere. We never found them, British found us, and they end up with us, and here we are, you know? So that's the dark reality, but we are contributing to it. Look at around you, whichever party you are, the people are, whichever background they come from, they're contributing into the system. We sit in here, we're trying to do our best to improve this city. So these all things has become, the reason is because now yeah, there are very good people maybe to my left, but the reality which we can't hide is the government is trying to just catch Nigel Farage because he's going up in the polls, and the government, I think they should stick to their principles. Yeah, hate will lose. And equally, Councillor Sanderson, Toke and the others, well, whatever Israeli government does, it has nothing to do with the Jewish community around the world. It doesn't matter. Equally, like when some other religious people do, and it has nothing to do with the other people. So do not blame the community or the religious people because some governmental actions. So let's stay united and let's beat this hate and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jafari Marbini.
I'm afraid that the last few weeks have been really distressing and have made me really, really sad. Because actually, when people talk about rapists, and there is actually so much Islamophobia in the commentary made online and on social media, and it's actually constantly repeated to us on the doorstep. Simon and I both hear it. It's not, and I'm sure in your wards as well, that is just out and out, basically saying every single Muslim man is a rapist. Like, that is almost repeated word for word in a lot of stuff that is said all the time. My father is one of those men, and my father was only able to come via a route which was available to him from Iran, and there are lots of Iranians and Kurdish people at the hotel because they don't have those routes open to them. But I'm going to start in Oxford, I'm going to come to the end to Oxford again about solutions of where we can go from here. Unfortunately, it is not just the Tommy Robinsons, the Larry Ellisons who's brought up TikTok that are producing these videos that are getting shared so rapidly that we can't even keep track of them. But it's actually the fact that it is coming from central government. Words like land of strangers. The land of strangers is because there's an elderly woman who can't actually get the bus to get where he needs to go. The land of strangers is because she's got a 10-minute slot with social care where she's not able to actually speak to anyone that she knows well. It's not actually the fault of the migrant that's actually wiping her bum that is the reason that she's lonely. That is not the reason. But yet it's being repeated ad nauseum by so-called leaders like Keir Starmer. And this phrasing, illegal migrant, it is not illegal to seek asylum. All of the people at the asylum hotel have sought asylum. That is not illegal. It is bad policy to place them all in one place in the most deprived part of Oxford and then expect there to be no issues arising. And it has actually been disgusting the last 48 hours that a pro-Palestinian anti-genocide movement has been labelled as the cause of an anti-Semitic hate crime. And it has actually been distressing to watch this, and it's been used to further try and reduce our rights. And that has been done by, unfortunately, the Labour government. And Defend Our Jury's pensioners holding up signs that have been arrested, including our own colleague, Councillor Imogen Thomas. I'm not sure whether you all were aware of that. So that is where we are at the moment. And the government is actually joining up with the far-right movement because it thinks that it's helping. But actually, the more you repeat this stuff, there's lots of evidence that the more you repeat these narratives, the more people are actually going to vote for the real thing. You can't out-reform reform. So what I urge this council to do, and the cabinet members specifically to do, the demos and shouting at each other doesn't work. I do engage people in conversation, however difficult what they're saying to me to hear is. All those sorts of things about not feeling safe, about is there asylum seekers, not the black ones, the Muslim ones. I try and engage people because we need to do that. And if they have real concerns about safety, we need to find out what's happened.
Thank you, Councillor.
But also, there is things
please.
like Barcelona. There is a Barcelona anti-rumour strategy, which I've already sent around to the cabinet members and to officers, which we can work on. There are humanising stories. There are lots and lots of stories of people, asylum seekers in the hotel. And
You're well over time now, sorry. We've got several more people to get through.
Humanising people.
If you could, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Harley next.
I'll be brief. I'm very supportive to all comments made by every previous speaker. But with regret, I cannot support part of point 2 of this resolution, and that's opposing the reopening of Campsfield House. I do not oppose the reopening, and it is purely on that point that I will not be supporting this motion. I will be abstaining.
Thank you for keeping it brief. Councillor Regisford.
Thank you. I'd like to highlight the intergenerational legacy of what this motion is bringing up for us to consider, and urge this chamber to be really bold, not only in supporting this motion, but looking at our policy making going forwards. This is fundamentally also about race and equity. We've heard people speak about wealth and the unequal share of wealth. Let's not forget we're in the UK's second wealthiest city, and the colonial implication of where that wealth was generated from cannot be ignored. Hear, hear. I would like to bring the voices of my family into this. This is Black History Month. This is October, Black History Month. 77 years after my parents came from the Caribbean as part of that Windrush generation. 77 years. The intergenerational legacy of the Rivers of Blood speech that still resonates today as an island of strangers cannot be ignored. What I want to highlight here is that our communities, and I speak about myself within this, are living in fear. So this discourse of hatred results in fear and invisibility. If you see me sitting here as the only Black councillor in this chamber, it is because sorry, woman, my apologies. Female. Thank you, apologies, councillor, right? But again, the minorities are reflected in this chamber, and what it takes to do what we're doing cannot be underestimated. When my colleagues go to the anti-demonstration marches at the weekends, my communities are cowering in the house in fear. When I share information about these counter-demonstration marches, everybody's like, listen, we're in our house and we're battening the hatches. Yeah. We cannot underestimate the impact and the intergenerational legacy of dispossession that still exists today. These are some of the deeper levels that we need to get closer to. Conscious of time, I would urge this House to really be bold in our policy making. We need to stand up, not only stand up, but be really bold and progressive in really attending to these invisible facets of the racism of that component that my colleague has highlighted here, and also the prejudice and the impact of that. Our people are still dispossessed 77 years, 3 generations later in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mundy, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yeah.
You did, I thought.
I'll be very brief.
Great.
Yeah, so I just wanted to draw reference really to Councillor Stair's contribution. I think we have to be really, really careful that we are not parroting the far right and sort of play into the far right and conspiracist playbook. We, as people have said, we do have tough conversations on the doorstep. It's not about listening to people's concerns they may be expressing in a troubled way or a way that reflects some misunderstandings about how the contribution that migrants make to our society and to our city. You have to be ready to challenge people when they speak in that way. You can't just sing to the tune that comes from the far right, that comes from Trumpism, and I'm sorry to say, but from the point of view of the Independent Oxfordshire Alliance, the links are too close to far right contributions, and I think you have to take a look at it. You have to take a look at it.
Yeah. Councillor Mundy,
they've had publications that have had contributions that are one step away from conspiracy theorists and the far right.
Councillor Mundy, let's not turn this into attacking other groups.
It's been challenged.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll accept the challenge, but that's what I've seen and that's what I'm saying. Look, just on another point, actually, in terms of Councillor Stairs, your contribution, factually, it really didn't make any sense to refer to leaving the back door open, because if you, in some ways, actually, in a similar sense, your biggest risk actually in terms of violence to the women of a household or children of a household is from the family members themselves. And I think we could actually notice that that analogy does translate in some sense. And so in that sense, actually, your contribution didn't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we're then going to Councillor Jarvis to second, and then Councillor Powell after that.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I wanted to start by thanking everyone who's spoken, well, almost everyone who's spoken in this debate for the contributions that people have made. I found it incredibly moving, and I think it's a real tribute to this council that this debate has been conducted in that way. I do think, as Councillor Mundy and others have already done so, I do think it is worth reflecting on the comments from a member of the Independent Oxford Alliance, and I did think it was remarkable that in a debate on resisting the far right, resisting racism and standing up for refugees and migrants, they still somehow made it into a conversation about traffic management. And I think that alongside the sort of dog whistle politics that we heard from that, I think we've slightly seen the mask slip there. Now, I think what's really telling and really sad and really there's a grim irony in this is since this motion was drafted, we've had things getting a lot worse, and that's only in the last 2 weeks. It's already been mentioned at the start of this debate and at the start of this meeting, the two horrific racist attacks that we've seen across the country, and indeed the attack that we saw on the Central Oxford Mosque as well. We've also seen the disgusting, disgraceful, and rightfully described by the Prime Minister, racist policies coming out of Reform UK to retrospectively remove the indefinite leave to remain from almost 1 million people in this country and to start deporting people, which is frankly disgraceful. But also, of course, the government's own proposals on indefinite leave to remain, which, whilst not anywhere near as bad, are still making this country a more hostile environment for people who have chosen to live here. Just minutes ago, before this debate started, the leading light of the Tory right, Robert Jenrick, was quoted and found to have been saying that in one area of Birmingham he didn't see a single other white face, and that is a country that he didn't want to live in. That is stark, frank, disgusting racism at the top of the Tory party. Now, I grew up in Birmingham. My accent's partially gone, but some of you might be able to work it out. And I'm incredibly proud to have grown up in Birmingham, and a city that was built on the backs of migration and the backs of migrants, and a city that is deeply diverse, and it's part of the reason why I love Oxford too. And over the last 6 weeks, I've been going back and forth between Oxford and Birmingham a lot because my dad has sadly been in hospital, and I've been spending a lot of time in hospitals in the NHS, and I've been reminded of a speech that was made in the House of Commons by Dennis Skinner, one of the great former Labour MPs, where he talked about the treatment that he received in the NHS and him having what he described as a United Nations heart bypass because of the range of countries and cultures and people that he was treated by in the hospital he was treated in. That was exactly the same experience I've had witnessing my dad's treatment, and it's exactly the same experience we have day to day in this country. We are a rich tapestry, we are strengthened by our diversity, and we must stand up as a council and as a city for that diversity, unite against the far right and the divisive narratives of them.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Powell, to summarise.
Thank you. I will keep this extremely brief. Thank you so much, colleagues, for your contribution. I've been particularly moved by the contributions from Councillor Regisford, Councillor Jafari Mabini and Councillor Sanderson. Thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you so much to the Labour group members who've taken this opportunity to speak out as well. I think looking at the context, we have to be honest with the fact that current government policy is playing a part in this, and I do think it speaks to your integrity that you've chosen to speak in that context. I will briefly address the comments from Councillor Stairs. I have to say, speaking as a gay man, actually I felt there was an assonance there with that tendency to other people, to paint people as a danger purely because of their difference. And I really, really hope you will reflect on the implication of what you say, because that kind of divisive narrative is exactly the sort of thing that ultimately those in the far right want us to do. They want us to fight each other rather than stand together and support our communities. And I hope you will reflect on that. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thank you all. So it's time now to vote on the motion. Can I see all those in favour of the motion? Thank you very much. Can I see those against the motion? And can I see abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. That's clearly overwhelmingly carried. Right. We don't have time for any more motions, but thank you for not making this last till 9 o'clock. So I think that is the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much. See you next